A broke young woman accidentally dents a millionaire's car. She expects the worst, but his reaction is something no one could have predicted. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Emma Taylor woke up to the dull glow of a Boston morning sky, the soft drizzle tapping against her small bedroom window. She rubbed her eyes, noticing immediately the damp chill that crept in through the old wooden frames. It was early, yet she already felt behind. With a heavy sigh, she pulled on a threadbare sweater and moved toward the kitchen of her modest apartment. Everything seemed grayer than usual, from the cracked linoleum floor to the bare walls decorated only with a few of her favorite illustrations, vivid images that offered a glimmer of hope in an otherwise stark room. She took out a half-empty box of cereal and poured it into a chipped bowl, listening to the drizzle intensify. Her thoughts wandered to the bills stacked on the table. Day by day, they seemed to multiply, each envelope a reminder of her dwindling bank balance. At 35, she had never imagined life would be this precarious. When she graduated from art school, her dreams involved a colorful future filled with successful children's books and a comfortable, if humble, home. Reality, however, found her juggling 2 or 3 part-time art jobs, tutoring private clients when she could find them, teaching an after-school art class in a local community center, and doing occasional illustration gigs for barely enough money to keep her afloat. The phone rang, startling her. She glanced at the number and saw her mother's name flashing across the screen. Though her mother lived all the way in Florida, she worried constantly. Emma considered letting it ring, knowing she had little comfort to offer this morning, but guilt won out. She picked up. Honey," her mother's concerned voice greeted her. "I was just thinking about you. How are things?" Emma forced a cheerful tone she didn't entirely feel. "I'm okay, Mom. Just busy. I've got some private lessons lined up later today." "That's good," her mother replied, though Emma could hear the undercurrent of doubt in her voice. "You know you could always come back home if you need to. I hate imagining you all alone in that rundown place." "I'm fine," Emma lied, glancing at the peeling wallpaper in the corner. "I promise I'm taking care of myself. And I'm still working on my picture book. Got a few new ideas I'm excited about." Her mother exhaled softly. "I just want you to be safe and happy." "Your dad would say the same." Emma felt a familiar ache in her chest at the mention of her father, who had passed away when she was in her teens. He had always encouraged her art, telling her that her sketches brought joy into the world. She missed that steady reassurance now. After ending the call, she quickly rinsed her cereal bowl and headed to her bedroom closet. She chose a loose-fitting pair of black pants that had seen better days and a simple blouse, clothes comfortable enough for a day spent kneeling beside easels or rummaging through art supplies. She retrieved her worn leather satchel and carefully placed a sketchbook inside, along with a small folder containing her latest illustrations. Maybe, she thought, maybe there would be a spare moment to visit a local publisher she'd been emailing. Though their polite, not the right fit messages echoed the rejection letters she kept tucked away in a drawer, Emma still clung to hope that persistence might pay off. Stepping out into the hallway, she locked her apartment door behind her. The overhead light flickered with a dull hum, casting a yellowish glow. Her neighbor, Mrs. Boyd, an elderly woman who spent most of her mornings knitting by the window, peered out and offered a kind wave. Emma smiled politely in return. Outside, the rain had picked up, forcing Emma to yank up the hood of her coat. Each drop felt colder than the last, but the worst was stepping into her battered Honda Civic. The driver's seat was perpetually damp from a small leak in the roof, and when she turned the ignition, it sputtered twice before catching. She exhaled a breath of relief, then glanced at the clock. She was supposed to meet a student across town for a private lesson. If traffic cooperated, she might make it on time. Merging onto the main avenue, Emma navigated through the slick streets, passing rows of brownstone buildings with iron railings and stoops. Boston's familiar skyline loomed in the distance. Despite the city's usual bustle, the weather seemed to have subdued everything. Even the street vendors looked miserable, huddled beneath their umbrellas. As Emma paused at a traffic light, she caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the rearview mirror. Dark curls escaping her hood and framing a face that tried to remain hopeful. She thought about her dream of publishing a children's book, the bright characters she had invented to bring comfort and wonder to young minds. She didn't want her struggles to overshadow that spark of creativity. The light turned green. Emma pressed the accelerator gently, mindful of the slippery roads. A sense of unease nagged at her, as if life was approaching a turning point. But she pressed on, telling herself she would find a way to pay the rent and buy groceries for another week. If she could just get through this gloomy day, maybe tomorrow would be brighter. She checked the time once more, deciding she had to hurry or risk losing her next paycheck. Without realizing it, she gripped the steering wheel tighter, steeling herself against whatever might lie ahead. Emma's tires hissed along the drenched asphalt as she maneuvered her old Honda Civic through early morning traffic. The windshield wipers worked at a frantic pace, trying to clear the steady downpour. She glanced repeatedly at the clock, the minutes ticking by faster than she liked. Her next private lesson was scheduled in less than 15 minutes, and she had at least a 10-minute drive ahead. She exhaled, trying to calm the dread twisting in her stomach. Every so often, she peered in the rearview mirror, spotting impatient drivers behind her. Boston's rush hour brought out the worst in people, and she didn't blame them for their restlessness. She was just as anxious, maybe more so, given how crucial each lesson's fee was to her. If she lost this client, she'd be skipping more meals than she already did. The rain intensified, dark clouds loomed overhead, casting an oppressive shadow across the neighborhood. Emma turned onto a narrower street, lined with tall brick buildings, their windows fogged by the temperature drop. She fiddled with the heater dial, hoping to keep the windshield from fogging over, but the ancient system offered only a tepid breeze. Her eyes flicked from the road to the defrost button, her fingers fumbling to adjust the settings. Suddenly, the car in front of her braked harder than expected, its red taillights flaring. Emma reacted, stomping on her brake pedal. The old Civic responded with a groan and a shudder, forcing her to swerve slightly to avoid a collision. Her heart hammered in her chest. She managed to avoid the rear of that vehicle by mere inches, feeling a jolt of relief. 1 block later, however, her luck ran out. As she approached a stop sign, another car appeared from her left, sleek and dark, gliding through the intersection with an air of effortless luxury. Emma pressed her brakes, but her worn tires slid across the slick pavement. It happened so quickly, she barely had time to register the symbol on the grille, a distinctive wing-like emblem on a polished hood. The impact came as a muted thud, her front bumper catching the side of the other vehicle. Her stomach lurched, a mix of adrenaline and horror washed over her. She wasn't going fast, but enough to feel the jolt and hear the crunch of metal against metal. The Honda Civic rocked gently to a halt. For a few seconds, the world seemed to spin in slow motion, the rain pounding on the roof like a drumroll of impending doom. Emma's hands shook. She set the car in park and turned off the engine. Through the rivulets of water streaming down her window, she caught sight of the vehicle she had struck, an Aston Martin. So immaculate it looked like it belonged in a showroom. The brand's emblem was unmistakable. She had never seen one so close, and certainly not in an accident. Her breath hitched as panic churned in her chest. She fumbled to open her door, blinking against the rain. Her coat's hood fell back, and water drenched her dark curls instantly. Head pounding, she walked around the front of her car. The damage was not catastrophic, but the shiny sports car's rear fender now sported a noticeable dent and several scratches. She prayed it might be minor, something that wouldn't cost thousands of dollars in repairs. Deep down, though, she suspected even the smallest dent on a luxury car could become a financial nightmare. A tall figure emerged from the driver's side of the Aston Martin, carrying an umbrella. He wore a tailored grey suit, his broad shoulders giving him an imposing silhouette in the downpour. As he stepped into the open, Emma noticed the sharp lines of his face and the well-groomed beard outlining a rigid jaw. His eyes, a striking shade of green, met hers with a calm intensity that took her by surprise. She swallowed hard, preparing for an onslaught of anger. "I'm so sorry," she blurted, her voice trembling. "The road was slick and I tried to brake. I didn't mean. I can't even begin to take a breath," he said, voice low but firm. "Are you hurt?" His lack of fury was unsettling. Emma expected shouting, insults, maybe even threats of legal action. Instead, he remained almost eerily composed, studying the damage with a narrowed gaze. She clung to the thin hope that maybe he wouldn't press charges. "I'm not hurt," she managed, "but I know I can't afford the repairs on your car. I don't even have enough savings to—" Her voice trailed off as she realized she was rambling. He let out a measured breath, the umbrella angled to shield him, though the steady wind still tossed stray droplets onto his suit. "My name is Nathan Donovan," he said, his tone neutral. "And you are?" "Emma," she replied, her hands shaking so much she had to clench them at her sides. "Emma Taylor." Nathan glanced at the dent on his Aston Martin. "You don't have to sound so terrified," he said, though his expression gave nothing away. "Let's see what can be done." Emma's heart pounded in her ears. She fought the urge to apologize 100 more times. The enormity of this situation weighed on her, a broke art teacher who had just slammed into a Millionaire'S luxury car. Her mind whirled with worst-case scenarios, each more dire than the last. She forced herself to stay calm, though inside, dread unfurled like a heavy knot in her stomach. Emma stood in the rain, shoulders tense as water seeped through her sweater. Her curly hair stuck to her cheeks, and she forced herself to look Nathan Donovan in the eye. He seemed to be examining her more than his damaged car, as though weighing whether she posed any immediate threat. That unnerved her even more than if he'd started shouting. Despite her fear, she mustered enough composure to search through her bag for a pen and a scrap of paper. "I'll give you my insurance information," she said quickly, though she knew her coverage was minimal. She swallowed hard. "If you file a claim, I'll figure out something." It sounded weak even to her own ears. She was keenly aware that figuring out something could involve taking on a massive debt. Nathan lowered the umbrella to shield them both. Rain pattered on the taut fabric overhead. Emma felt his gaze settle on the top of her head before she dared to glance up. His eyes flicked over the water droplets rolling down her face. He seemed oddly calm, perhaps weighing how best to proceed. "Emma," he said, his tone measured, "maybe we should move this conversation somewhere dry. You're soaking wet. I'd rather not stand here in a downpour." His unexpected civility caught her off guard, but she nodded. "My car's still running," she said, voice shaky. "I can follow you somewhere nearby if you'd like." Nathan considered the offer for a moment. "I have an office not too far from here. If you're comfortable driving, we can talk there." Emma knew she had no grounds to argue. "All right," she agreed, inching back toward her Civic. She noticed the suit jacket Nathan wore was getting splattered with rain, but he didn't seem to care. They climbed into their respective vehicles. Emma's heart drummed in her chest, a cacophony of fear and guilt. She could see the glint of the Aston Martin's taillights as Nathan pulled forward, the dent on the side reminding her of the predicament she was now in. She wiped her face with a damp napkin, trying to steady her nerves. During the short drive, she couldn't stop replaying the incident in her mind. She imagined the worst scenarios, that she'd be sued, forced to declare bankruptcy, maybe even lose her apartment. For all she knew, Nathan Donovan might be an unforgiving mogul, and she had just handed him reason to come after her meager assets. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself that she had to stay strong. Before long, they arrived at a sleek, modern building with mirrored windows that reflected the stormy sky. A security guard waved them into an underground parking garage. Emma followed Nathan's lead, parking in a visitor's spot next to his battered Aston Martin, which still looked pristine compared to her aging Honda. They stepped out of their cars. Nathan gestured for Emma to follow him to an elevator that led directly into an upscale lobby. The warmth and quiet inside was a stark contrast to the cold rain outside. Soft, recessed lighting made the polished floors gleam. Emma tried not to slip on the wet soles of her shoes. He led her to a private lounge area near the reception desk. Plush chairs and a glass coffee table stood in an inviting arrangement. She noticed the discreet glances from a few employees who passed by, but no one dared interrupt. Nathan placed his umbrella against the wall and turned to Emma. "Why don't you sit?" he offered, pointing to a chair. Emma complied, feeling like a child summoned to the principal's office. The tension in her shoulders threatened to migrate up her neck. She glanced around, noticing the expensive art pieces mounted on the walls, abstract paintings, expertly lit. It made her heart sink further. She understood just how different his world was. Nathan took a seat across from her, steepling his fingers. "I'd like to hear about what happened," he said quietly. "You mentioned the roads were slippery. I'm not questioning that, but how did you end up hitting the car?" Emma tried to steady her voice. "I was on my way to a private art lesson, running late. The car in front of me stopped short, and then, I'm afraid my tires are pretty worn, and I slid on the wet pavement. I honestly didn't see your car until it was too late." Nathan's expression remained neutral, though there was a flicker of something, curiosity, perhaps, in his gaze. "You're an art teacher, then?" She nodded. "Yes, I also illustrate children's books, though not professionally, at least not yet." Her cheeks warmed in embarrassment. "I'm sorry. This is probably the last thing you want to hear. I just want to be transparent. I truly don't have the money for this kind of repair. My insurance might cover some, but definitely not all." He leaned back, looking thoughtful. "I see." Emma braced herself for him to lay out an ultimatum, maybe a threatening line about legal action or demands for immediate payment. She couldn't imagine any alternative. Yet Nathan said nothing for a long moment. He glanced briefly at his watch, then let his gaze travel from Emma's soaked sweater to the anxious grip of her hands in her lap. She found herself wishing the rain would wash away all her problems, but life didn't work like that. The muted hum of the building's ventilation system provided an odd backdrop to the tension in the lounge. Emma sat there, her gaze occasionally flicking to the tall windows overlooking the city. Droplets raced each other down the glass, reflecting the gloom of the overcast sky. She struggled to maintain composure, wondering how long Nathan intended to let the silence linger. Finally, he shifted in his seat. "I'm not the type who enjoys scaring people," he began, studying her intently. "I've had my share of accidents, though never with someone who's so obviously distraught." Emma swallowed, realizing her face must have been a canvas of anxiety. She cleared her throat. "I appreciate you hearing me out." Nathan's eyes narrowed, as though measuring every word. "If you can't afford the repairs, what do you propose?" She opened her mouth, but no sound emerged at first. She had no coherent plan. She was barely managing day to day. I can try to work out a payment plan. I don't know how else to—" She halted, aware of how pathetic it must sound. He glanced at the dark clouds outside. "I could sue," he said bluntly, though without menace, but that would be tedious for both of us. You look like someone who wants to do the right thing, but you're not in a position to handle this financially." Emma's stomach dropped. She pictured losing her apartment, having her wages garnished, maybe even filing for bankruptcy. Words caught in her throat, and she simply nodded, confirming his observation. Nathan ran a hand across his neatly trimmed beard. "I'm known for my intense reactions," he admitted. "In business, that often translates to being ruthless, but occasionally I try a different approach." She blinked, uncertain if that was meant to comfort her. "A different approach," she echoed. He studied the surface of the coffee table as if gathering his thoughts. "I have a daughter, Bella. She's 7, and she hasn't spoken a word in 2 years. She lost her mother, my wife, in an accident, and after that she just withdrew." Emma felt a pang in her chest. She thought of the children she taught in community art classes, some of whom faced their own hardships. "I'm really sorry to hear that," she said softly. "That must be so hard." Nathan nodded, his gaze briefly distant. "It is. I've tried everything. Therapy, tutors, different activities. Nothing's made a difference. I'm starting to wonder if she'll ever come out of her silence." Though she wasn't sure where he was going with this, Emma's protective instincts flared with empathy. "Sometimes it just takes the right person or method," she offered. "Art can be a powerful tool for expression. It's why I'm so dedicated to teaching, even though it doesn't pay much." Nathan's lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile. "Yes, I noticed you mentioned you're an art teacher." He paused, leaning forward. "I have a proposal. Instead of paying for the car repairs, you could come to the house to give Bella private art lessons. If you managed to engage her, or at least provide her with some outlet, that would be worth more than any insurance payout." Emma inhaled sharply, stunned by the suggestion. Immediately, doubt flickered across her mind. Was this a genuine offer or a setup for something else? She felt her cheeks warm at the thought of entering a millionaire's home. The power imbalance was glaring, and she couldn't ignore the possibility that he might have ulterior motives. Still, her compassion for a child in pain was genuine. If Bella truly needed help, and Emma could provide it, maybe this was a chance to do something meaningful and avoid financial ruin. The idea made her heart pound. I don't know," she stammered. "I'd be willing to try, of course, but it sounds like a big responsibility. What if I fail?" Nathan tilted his head, regarding her seriously. "I can't guarantee success. All I know is Bella used to love to draw when her mother was alive. Since then, she's shown no interest in anything. I suspect you might have a better chance of reaching her than the therapists we've hired." She thought about how to respond. Despite her fears, a small voice inside her recognized an opportunity, perhaps not just to avoid a legal dispute, but to help a child who'd lost her mother. "I'm not a licensed therapist," Emma warned. "I'm just an art teacher. Sometimes an empathetic teacher is exactly what a child needs," he countered. A wave of conflicting emotions rippled through her. She wanted to say yes for Bella's sake, but worry gnawed at the edges of her conscience. Was this truly as innocent as it appeared, or would there be hidden strings attached? Yet as she looked into Nathan's guarded eyes, she sensed genuine concern beneath that polished exterior. "All right," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of relief and trepidation. "I'll do it. I'll teach Bella, but please understand, I'm not making any promises. I'll just give it my best." Nathan nodded. "That's all I ask." And so, amidst the soft glow of recessed lighting, Emma found herself agreeing to a startling arrangement, one that might alter her life more than she could imagine. Later that afternoon, Emma sat hunched over a small wooden desk in the lobby area, filling out a visitor's pass for Donovan Tech. Nathan had gone to speak with his personal assistant about scheduling and logistics, leaving Emma alone with her tangled thoughts. She pressed the pen to the paper with such intensity that the tip dug through and left indentations on the surface below. She fought the urge to second-guess her decision. Part of her felt relief at not being dragged into a courtroom to face crippling debt, yet an equal part of her felt vulnerable. She was about to walk into a wealthy man's world, one that seemed so different from her cramped studio apartment where the paint peeled and the rent loomed each month. When Nathan returned, he handed her a sleek business card. "This has my direct number," he said. "I'll message you the address for my home later. Let's plan on starting the lessons next week. That gives me time to talk to Bella and make sure she's okay having someone new around." Emma accepted the card, noticing the expensive texture of its embossed design. She tucked it into her bag with a nod. "Thank you. I'll prepare some lesson plans, figure out what materials might be best. I don't know how Bella will respond, but I'll make sure everything is welcoming." Nathan offered a curt nod. "We'll figure out the details soon. In the meantime, I'll inform my staff that you'll be a regular visitor." He paused, taking in Emma's anxious posture. "Relax. I'm not going to change my mind and sue you. This arrangement is more beneficial to me than you might realize." His comment only heightened her unease. She wanted to believe he wasn't setting some unseen trap. She had heard rumors of ruthless CEOs who manipulated people without remorse, but she wasn't sure if Nathan truly fit that stereotype. His expression was hard to read, though there was a flicker of genuine concern when he spoke about his daughter. She thanked him again in a soft voice and left the building, stepping back into the dreary afternoon. The rain had slowed to a cold drizzle, but it still soaked her shoes and clung to her jeans. She hurried to her Civic, which looked even more battered and dented under the fluorescent garage lights. As she turned the key in the ignition, a swirl of emotions clouded her thoughts. Relief, guilt, uncertainty, and a sliver of cautious hope. Driving home, she replayed the conversation in her head, the image of Bella, silent, withdrawn, a child who had lost her mother, lingered in Emma's mind. It struck a chord of sympathy and made her reflect on her own past, when she lost her father and found refuge in art. Perhaps she could reach Bella in a way professional therapists had not. By the time Emma parked near her apartment, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows on the damp pavement. She trudged up the stairs to her unit, her tired legs protesting each step. Inside, she flipped on the light and dropped her bag by the door, letting out a shaky breath. Her phone chimed with a text message, an address followed by a short note from Nathan. "This is where you'll be teaching Bella. Let me know if you have any questions." Emma stared at the text for a moment, then saved the address into her Maps app. She felt as if she'd just signed a contract with fate, one that might either rescue her from financial hardship or plunge her further into unforeseen complications. Before she could dwell on it further, her phone rang. This time, it was Sarah Monroe, her friendly neighbor and occasional confidant. Emma answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hey, Emma, you doing okay?" Sarah asked, her tone light but concerned. "You're usually back earlier." "Everything all right?" Emma hesitated. Part of her wanted to spill every detail, but she worried it might sound too bizarre. Still, Sarah was one of the few people she trusted. "I got into a little car accident," she admitted. "Scratched up a Millionaire'S luxury ride, and he made me a surprising offer." "Seriously?" Sarah's voice grew more urgent. "You're not hurt, are you?" "No, I'm fine," Emma assured her. "But he wants me to teach art to his daughter in exchange for not charging me for the repairs. I mean, that's good news, I guess. But I'm pretty nervous about stepping into his life. Rich people can be complicated." Sarah let out a low whistle. "You always find the most dramatic ways to get new clients." A small laugh escaped Emma's lips, the first light moment she'd felt all day. "I know, right? Anyway, I'll fill you in more later." "I'm just trying to process it all. I'm here if you need me," Sarah said gently. "Just be careful, okay?" Emma promised she would. After hanging up, she slumped onto her worn couch, gazing absently at her bookshelf stacked with art supplies and half-finished sketches. She couldn't shake the sense that this was only the beginning of something far larger than an accident claim. Tomorrow, she thought, she would begin preparing her lessons and perhaps brace herself for whatever storms might come. Emma awakened early the following week, her mind churning with a mix of anticipation and worry. The deal she'd struck with Nathan Donovan hung over her every thought. She poured a cup of coffee, sipped it absent-mindedly, and glanced at the lesson plans she'd been preparing. While she felt confident in her teaching approach, the idea of stepping into a millionaire's home to instruct a silent, grieving child was daunting. To calm her nerves, she decided to walk part of the way to Donovan Tech. She'd been asked to stop by before going to Nathan's mansion. Apparently, his personal assistant, Evelyn Sterling, wanted to meet with her first. A brisk morning breeze ruffled Emma's dark curls as she paced along the sidewalk, hugging her sketch portfolio tight against her body. Boston's streets were already alive with honking cars and rushing pedestrians, each person occupied with their own challenges. She reminded herself that everyone carried invisible burdens, though not all weighed the same. Upon reaching Donovan Tech's sleek lobby, Emma felt the usual wave of intimidation at the polished marble floors and glass walls. She approached the reception desk, explained her appointment, and was handed a name badge. A short elevator ride later, she arrived on the executive floor, where Evelyn waited for her. Evelyn Sterling was in her mid-50s, with short, perfectly styled silver hair and a calm, knowing smile. Her attire, a neatly pressed navy blazer and matching slacks, exuded efficiency, but there was kindness in the way she welcomed Emma with an outstretched hand. "Emma Taylor?" Evelyn asked. "I'm Evelyn Sterling. Thanks for coming a bit earlier. Nathan is finalizing a conference call, so I thought it would be helpful if we had a chat." Emma returned the handshake, struck by how warm Evelyn's hands were. "Sure. It's nice to meet you. Nathan mentioned you're aware of the situation with Bella." Evelyn nodded gently and gestured for Emma to follow her into a glass-walled conference room. Once they were seated, she offered Emma a cup of tea. Emma accepted, feeling slightly relieved by the pleasant atmosphere. "I've worked for the Donovan family for nearly a decade," Evelyn began, adding a dash of sugar to her own tea. "In that time, I saw Bella grow from a bright-eyed toddler into a sweet, lively little girl, but since her mother passed away, everything has changed. She hardly speaks a word, and that, as you know, has persisted for 2 years." Emma breathed in the comforting aroma of her tea. "That must be so painful for Nathan," she said softly, remembering how haunted Nathan had seemed when mentioning Bella's silence. Evelyn gave a small, sad smile. "It's been devastating for everyone who loves Bella, but it has hit Nathan especially hard. He blames himself, thinks he could have somehow prevented his wife's death. Logically, of course, he knows that's not true, yet grief twists our perceptions." Emma set her cup down. "I understand. I lost my father when I was young. It changed me, but art helped me cope. That's part of why I teach. It feels like sharing that healing space." Evelyn studied her with renewed interest. "So your passion for art has personal roots?" "Very personal." Emma hesitated, unsure if she should mention the accident with the Aston Martin or how close she'd come to facing a ruinous lawsuit. Instead, she steered the conversation toward Bella's needs. "Nathan is giving me this opportunity to teach Bella. I'm just hoping she'll be open to trying. I'm not a therapist, but I promise to use everything I know." Evelyn leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. I have faith that you might be the fresh perspective Bella needs. Therapists and specialists come with forms and strategies. Sometimes a child just wants to paint, or color, or doodle without judgment. She paused, as if weighing her words. Nathan is also in need of someone who can bring warmth into that house again. It's been cold there for too long. Emma nodded, her heart twinging at the thought of a lonely mansion enveloped by grief. She knew art could brighten any space, but she also recognized that healing required more than just paints and brushes. It demanded patience and genuine compassion. Just then, a discreet knock on the glass panel alerted them to Nathan's presence in the hallway. He entered, wearing a tailored suit that underscored his commanding stature. His green eyes moved from Evelyn to Emma. "Good morning," he greeted, taking a seat beside Evelyn. "I hope Evelyn's been bringing you up to speed." "She has," Emma replied, feeling a flutter of nerves in her stomach. "I'm ready to do my best with Bella, whatever that looks like." Nathan glanced at the window behind them, where the skyline of the city gleamed. "Thank you. Let's head to the house soon. I'd like you to meet Bella in a more comfortable setting. She can be wary of strangers, so there's no rush." He exchanged a look with Evelyn, who gave Emma a reassuring nod. Emma noted the subtle interplay between them. Evelyn seemed not just an assistant, but a trusted confidant, possibly the only person in Nathan's world who wasn't intimidated by him. Emma felt a flicker of gratitude for Evelyn's support, sensing that the woman might be a pillar of stability in the Donovan household. They rose, and Evelyn accompanied them to the elevator, offering a few last words of encouragement to Emma before parting ways. Emma stepped into the elevator with Nathan, clutching her portfolio. As the doors slid shut, she couldn't help but wonder what awaited her behind the grand doors of his home. Emma settled into the passenger seat of a sleek town car that Nathan had arranged for the trip. He explained that he preferred to avoid driving in the city when he had other things on his mind. The quiet, leather-clad interior felt like a world away from her rickety Honda Civic. She took a moment to marvel at the stark difference between their lifestyles. Nathan scrolled through messages on his phone, occasionally casting a sidelong glance at Emma. The hum of the engine and the distant sounds of the city traffic enveloped them. She wondered if she should initiate conversation, but the weight of the upcoming meeting with Bella made her focus on what she would say, or not say, to the girl. When they emerged from the heart of Boston's bustling streets, the scenery began to change. Buildings gave way to wider roads flanked by towering trees. The suburban sprawl thinned out until they reached a gated neighborhood, large estates set back from the winding drive. Emma peered out the window, her anxiety mounting as the car passed immaculately trimmed hedges and gleaming iron gates. After a short drive, the vehicle turned into a long driveway lined with old oaks, their branches arching overhead like a protective canopy. In the distance, Emma caught sight of Nathan's mansion, modern architecture fused with the charm of traditional stonework, creating an imposing yet elegant structure. Floor-to-ceiling windows gleamed, reflecting the midday sun. Stepping out, Emma clutched her portfolio tighter. She couldn't recall the last time she felt so aware of her worn-out shoes and modest outfit. A valet approached to take the car, nodding politely in Emma's direction. She offered a timid smile in return, following Nathan up the front steps and through enormous double doors. Inside, the foyer was flooded with natural light from high windows that showcased a view of the estate grounds. Polished marble floors led to a spacious corridor adorned with tasteful, abstract art. Everything was immaculate. Too immaculate, Emma thought, scanning the space for hints of the young girl who lived here. She saw no trace of scattered toys or colorful drawings pinned to the walls. It gave her a slight chill, as if the house itself was under a silent agreement to remain pristine and formal. Nathan cleared his throat. I'd like you to meet Margaret Lewis, our housekeeper. She's been with our family a long time and is very fond of Bella." As he spoke, a woman in her early 60s emerged from a side doorway, wiping her hands on a crisp apron. She had short, neatly styled hair, and her warm eyes lit up when she saw Emma. "You must be Miss Taylor," Margaret said, extending a hand. "We've been expecting you. It's lovely to have some new energy around here." Emma's shoulders relaxed slightly. "It's nice to meet you too. Please, call me Emma." She noticed a subtle air of protectiveness in Margaret's demeanor, as though she stood guard over Bella's emotional well-being. Nathan gestured down a hallway. "I'll show Emma the room we've set up for her art sessions with Bella." "Margaret, could you let Bella know we have a guest?" Margaret nodded, but concern flickered across her face. "Of course. I'll do my best to coax her out of her room, Mr. Donovan." They made their way to a spacious studio-like room with large windows that overlooked the back garden. The flooring here was hardwood instead of marble, and a set of shelves lined one wall, stocked with brushes, paints, and sketchbooks. A new easel stood by the window, the wood unstained and fresh. Emma ran her fingers over it, amazed that Nathan had gone to such lengths to create a dedicated space for Bella's lessons. Nathan noticed her reaction. "I figured if Bella was going to try art again, she deserved quality supplies," he explained, slipping his phone into his pocket. "I'm not sure what she'll agree to use, though." Emma placed her portfolio on a nearby table. "Having everything ready might encourage her," she said, her voice reflecting cautious optimism. "Even if she doesn't talk, maybe I can observe what draws her attention." Nathan stepped closer to the wide windows. He gazed outside at the manicured lawn before speaking. "This place has felt empty for a long time," he admitted. "Julie's passing cast a shadow that lingers. If Bella starts painting again, maybe that shadow will lift a bit." His tone softened at the mention of his late wife, and Emma sensed the loneliness he tried so hard to mask. She wanted to offer words of comfort but held back, unsure how far to open that door. Before she could decide, Margaret appeared in the doorway, a small frown lining her features. "She's by the oak tree in the back, Mr. Donovan," Margaret said quietly. Sitting in her usual spot, Nathan exchanged a look with Emma. "Would you like to approach her out there?" Emma swallowed. "Yes. I think meeting in a comfortable place might be best. She might feel less cornered than if we drag her inside to meet a stranger." Margaret nodded her approval, stepping aside so Emma could pass. As Emma left the studio, her heart pounded with the realization that she was about to meet Bella for the first time, a child whose life had been eclipsed by grief. Emma carefully cradled a small sketchbook in her arms, determined to begin forging a gentle connection. Emma followed Nathan through a glass-paneled door that opened onto the back terrace. A light breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass. An expansive lawn spread out before them, dotted with ancient oak trees. At the far end, she spotted a petite figure sitting on the ground, leaning against one of the thick trunks. They approached slowly, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the manicured grass. Bella didn't move. From a distance, Emma could see the child's sandy brown hair pulled into a simple ponytail. Her face was partially hidden as she gazed downward at something in her lap, perhaps a little twig or a leaf she was fiddling with. "Bella," Nathan called softly when they were several steps away. His voice carried the careful tone of a man who feared startling his own child. "I'd like you to meet someone." The little girl shifted her head just enough to show she'd heard him, but she didn't stand. Emma took a moment to steady her breathing. This was more delicate than any first lesson she'd given. She made sure to move within Bella's field of vision, but not too close, respecting the distance a shy or traumatized child might need. "Hi, Bella," Emma said in a gentle tone. She lowered herself onto the grass, leaving a couple of feet between them. "My name is Emma. Your dad asked me to do some art with you. Bella's gaze flicked toward Emma, a faint spark of curiosity in her green eyes, which mirrored Nathan's. But she made no sound. Her small shoulders tensed. She pressed her lips together as if sealing them shut. Nathan observed them silently for a moment. "I'll give you two some space," he murmured, careful not to impose. "I'll be just inside, Bella." He turned and walked back, though Emma could sense his lingering concern in every step. Emma exhaled, her heart pounding. She opened the small sketchbook on her lap and began to doodle a simple scene, a tree with swirling branches, reminiscent of the very oak shading them. She made sure Bella could see what she was doing, occasionally glancing up to gauge the girl's reaction. "Sometimes when I'm sitting outside, I like to draw whatever's around me," Emma said. "I don't worry if it's perfect. I just put pencil to paper and see what happens." Bella remained still, though Emma noticed her eyes flit to the sketchbook for a moment. Encouraged, Emma added a few leaves and then sketched a small bird perched on a branch. She remembered that children often responded to animals or whimsical elements in drawings. "You can draw, too," Emma offered, flipping to a blank page. She placed a spare pencil on the paper, then slid the open sketchbook toward Bella, not forcing it into her hands, but leaving it within reach. "No rules. You can scribble, doodle, or write if you want." The girl's fingers twitched, and for a second it seemed she might reach for the pencil. Instead, she closed her hand into a fist and withdrew slightly, as though unsure if she should engage. A pang of sympathy shot through Emma. This child carried a heavy burden of loss, which manifested as silence and retreat. Emma continued sketching in her own book, occasionally chatting in a soft voice. She made no demands, only describing silly things like a cartoon squirrel rummaging for acorns or the shapes of clouds overhead. Bit by bit, she sensed Bella's tension easing. Her posture grew less rigid, and her eyes flicked up to watch Emma's hand move across the paper. After nearly 15 minutes of quiet company, Bella shifted. She inched closer to Emma's book, peeking at the drawing of the swirling oak branches. Emma caught the subtle motion and offered an encouraging smile, but kept her attention on the page, hoping not to spook Bella by staring too intently. When the little girl finally reached a tentative hand toward the spare pencil, Emma felt relief blossom in her chest. Bella didn't pick it up but merely touched it, as if testing its solidity. Emma pretended not to notice, continuing her own doodles. They remained that way for a while, sitting under the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves. Emma remembered her father's advice that sometimes just being present and available was enough to help someone open up. She hoped the same was true for Bella. A short while later, Emma gently closed her sketchbook, giving Bella a soft smile. "I'm going to head back inside," she said, keeping her voice low. "But I'll come back whenever you want to draw. You can keep that pencil if you like." Bella looked at the pencil resting on the grass. She didn't move or speak, but Emma took the slight lift of her chin as an acknowledgement. Standing up slowly, Emma left Bella beneath the oak tree, her thoughts swirling with cautious optimism and quiet determination. Emma retraced her steps to the house, feeling the sun warm her shoulders. The mansion seemed far larger and more intimidating now, as though it guarded its secrets behind polished doors, but the memory of Bella's half-curious, half-anxious gaze anchored Emma in her purpose. As soon as she stepped inside, she found Nathan waiting near the foyer, pretending to examine a painting on the wall, but obviously anxious for an update. She tucked her sketchbook under one arm and approached him with a reassuring nod. "She didn't speak," Emma said, "but she stayed there with me, watched me draw." She almost picked up the pencil at one point. Nathan released a small, shaky exhale. "That's more than she does for most people," He glanced down the hallway leading to the backyard. It's a good start. Margaret appeared from the kitchen, carrying a tray with 2 cups of tea and a plate of cookies. "Thought you might like a little break," she said, setting them on a side table. "Art lessons can be hungry work." Emma thanked her, admiring the housekeeper's gentle sense of care. Margaret poured the tea while Nathan lingered, his gaze distant, as though he was still out by the oak tree with Bella. "I'll see if Bella wants a snack later," Margaret said quietly, stepping away to attend to her duties. Emma sipped the tea, grateful for the warmth. "She's going to need time to trust me," she said to Nathan. "It might help if we create a more inviting atmosphere for her art sessions. Maybe a favorite snack or some music, something that doesn't pressure her but makes her feel comfortable." Nathan nodded, a thoughtful crease forming on his brow. "Whatever you think is best, just let me know." After finishing her tea, Emma decided to explore the studio space again. She wanted to get a feel for the supplies and maybe leave a few drawings around that Bella could find if curiosity struck. Nathan trailed after her, clearly unwilling to leave the matter entirely in her hands. Yet, stepping into the studio, Emma noticed more details this time: the sunlight filtering through large windows, the faint smell of fresh paint, and the organized shelves of materials. She found a row of colored pencils and gently tested one on a scrap of paper. They were smooth and vibrant, high-end supplies. "I had Evelyn gather whatever we thought might interest Bella," Nathan explained, stepping beside her. "She used to paint with watercolors as a toddler, but she hasn't touched them since the accident." Emma glanced at him. She sensed he wanted to share more, but struggled with how. "Maybe we can leave some watercolor sets on the table so she can see them whenever she's ready," Emma suggested gently. "Let them become a familiar sight, even if she doesn't use them right away." Nathan rubbed the back of his neck, looking almost sheepish. "I'm not exactly great at this. Fatherhood was easier before. There was always Julie, and now—" His voice trailed off, leaving the rest unspoken. Emma placed the colored pencil down. She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I can't imagine how hard it's been. But Bella is still here, and she needs someone to meet her where she is. Just be present for her, the way you can." He gave a faint nod. "I'll try. If there's one thing I won't do, it's give up on her." Emma admired his resolve. For all his wealth and power, Nathan's heartbreak rendered him as vulnerable as any struggling parent. She wondered how someone so successful could feel so lost in his personal life. Before either of them could say more, a soft knock on the studio door made them turn. Margaret stood there, wearing a guarded expression. "Mr. Donovan, you might want to know that Bella came inside. She's in her room now." "Did she say anything?" Nathan asked, his posture tense. Margaret shook her head. "No, sir. She walked straight upstairs, but she's holding a pencil." The faintest smile tugged at Emma's lips. It was a small victory. Bella hadn't thrown the pencil away or ignored it. She'd carried it with her. Nathan looked at Emma, a glimmer of something akin to hope in his eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly. Emma let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of his gratitude, which only deepened her determination to help Bella. While their progress was fragile, these subtle shifts felt like stepping stones, each one leading them further from the darkness that had overshadowed the Donovan home. The following days brought Emma to Nathan's mansion, on a routine that felt strange but gradually comforting. Each afternoon, she made her way to the estate, sometimes traveling in her own rusted Civic to keep a sense of independence. She'd bring new art prompts or ideas, always in the hope of coaxing Bella into a little more engagement. Evelyn, true to her promise, was instrumental in ensuring Emma felt welcome. She occasionally visited the studio, offering insights from her years working for the family. Bella used to hide under the dining room table with crayons, she once recalled fondly. Julie would pretend not to notice until Bella triumphantly showed off a scribbled masterpiece. Margaret Ewart, for her part, provided a warm presence. She prepared snacks that Bella once loved, hoping they might spark a nostalgic memory. Although Bella still maintained her silence, she sometimes ventured into the studio to watch Emma work, a distant curiosity in her eyes. One afternoon, Emma decided to try watercolor with Bella. She set out 2 palettes on a wide table, each brimming with bright colors. Bella lingered in the doorway, peering at the small jars of water. Emma's heart thumped as she asked softly, "Would you like to paint with me?" The girl responded by stepping closer, her hands tense at her sides, but still she made no move to pick up a brush. In those moments, Emma felt the presence of subtle allies all around them, people rooting for Bella's breakthrough. Andrew, the estate's chef, popped his head in from time to time, offering freshly baked cookies or a glass of juice. He never spoke much, but the kindness in his eyes encouraged Emma. One day, Andrew surprised Emma by leaving a tray of blank sugar cookies next to an array of colorful icing tubes. A small note read, "Maybe Bella would like to paint on cookies too." Emma grinned at his resourcefulness and resolved to incorporate that idea into a fun cookie art session. Nathan, meanwhile, kept a respectful distance, always checking in at the periphery. Emma sensed that his presence sometimes increased Bella's anxiety, though the child did watch him carefully when he entered the studio. Emma tried to keep the mood light, letting Bella come and go as she wished. Eventually, Bella began hovering near Emma's workspace for longer stretches. She'd sit on a small stool, hugging her knees, observing Emma swirl water onto the paper, thinning out vivid pigments into gentle washes of color. Little by little, the girl's eyes would drift toward a brush or a pencil, her fingers curling with an almost imperceptible longing to try. One afternoon, Emma quietly offered Bella a brush. Bella stared at it for a few seconds, then reached out and took it in her small hand. Though she never uttered a word, she dipped the brush into the water and tentatively into a light shade of green, dabbing it onto the paper. The resulting splotch was uneven, but to Emma, it felt like the sun breaking through clouds after a storm. When the brush's bristles spread the color, Bella paused and looked up at Emma, her eyes wide as if asking, "Is this okay?" Emma gave her a gentle smile and nodded encouragement. Bella turned back to the paper and continued, creating abstract shapes in varied shades. Though it was only a few moments, the act of painting was a milestone. At dinner that evening, Margaret couldn't contain her excitement, announcing to Nathan that Bella had finally held a brush. Nathan's reaction was a mixture of relief and cautious optimism. He gave Emma a grateful glance that lingered a bit too long, hinting at an emotional connection forming. Later, as Emma packed up her materials, Evelyn found her in the studio tidying the brushes. "You know," Evelyn said, her tone hushed so as not to carry down the hall, "Bella showing any interest at all is significant. I think you've done more in a few days than a year's worth of formal therapy sessions managed." Emma set the last brush on a drying rack, a lightness in her chest. "I'm just trying to give her a safe space," she said softly. "It's not magic, really. It's just letting her be who she is." Evelyn nodded, her eyes warm with approval. "Keep going, Emma. I have a feeling Bella isn't the only one who might benefit from all this." Emma paused at the statement. The subtle implication that Nathan, too, might find solace in her presence was not lost on her, but she brushed aside any thoughts of personal entanglement. Her focus was Bella, who stood on the edge of something that felt like hope. That Friday, Emma arrived at the mansion under a bruised sky, thunder rumbling in the distance. The atmosphere felt charged, as though the shifting weather might foreshadow something momentous. She was greeted by Margaret, who informed her that Bella was in the living room rather than the studio, a rare occurrence, since Bella typically avoided common areas. Emma found the young girl sitting on a plush rug by the fireplace, hugging a stuffed cat in her lap. Nathan stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed, watching Bella with careful eyes. A faint flicker of surprise crossed his face when Emma walked in. "Bella was here when I came downstairs," he explained. "She seemed restless. I told her you'd be arriving soon. Then she just stayed put." Emma knelt at Bella's side, gently placing her bag of art supplies on the floor. The child looked up, not startled, but her expression was solemn. She clutched the stuffed animal protectively. "Hi, Bella," Emma said, smiling. She rummaged through her supplies and pulled out a sketch pad and a fresh set of colored pencils. "I brought something new we can try. They're really bright colors, like a rainbow." Bella's fingers curled around the plush cat more tightly, but she didn't turn away. A subtle shift of her posture indicated she was paying attention. Emma took out a red pencil and began to draw on the pad. A simple heart, then some wiggly lines that cascaded into waves. She kept her voice soft, describing each color as if it were a living thing: blue that's cool like an evening sky, yellow that's warm like the sun on your cheeks. Meanwhile, thunder cracked in the distance, causing Bella to flinch. Emma noticed the tension ripple through her small frame. She paused her drawing to look at Bella. "It's okay," Emma said gently. "Thunder can be scary sometimes. Want to draw the storm. Sometimes drawing something that scares us makes it a little less frightening." Bella glanced at the window where dark clouds loomed. She pressed her lips together, then slowly let go of the stuffed cat. Her small hand reached for a blue pencil, then a gray one. She began coloring on a blank page Emma had slid in front of her, each stroke hesitant but purposeful. Emma watched with quiet excitement. Bella was expressing herself, even if silently. While Bella drew, the overhead lights flickered, briefly dimming. A loud rumble of thunder echoed, and the windows rattled. Bella's pencil jerked, leaving a harsh line of gray across her carefully shaded cloud. She froze, her shoulders trembling. "Bella," Emma murmured, placing a reassuring hand near, but not on, her shoulder. "It's okay if the line isn't perfect. We can turn it into something else, or leave it how it is. Mistakes can be part of the art." Suddenly, Bella made a frustrated motion with her hand, knocking the pencil box over. Colors scattered across the rug. Emma and Nathan both moved in closer, but Bella shrank back, tears welling in her eyes. The tension in the room spiked, and Emma could see how close Bella was to retreating completely. Trying to remain calm, Emma picked up a stray pencil, gray like the stormy sky, and placed it gently in front of Bella again. "Sometimes it helps to just scribble out our feelings," she said. "No rules, no right or wrong." For a heartbeat, Bella looked as though she might bolt from the room. Then her shoulders slumped, and she pressed the pencil tip down on the paper, unleashing a flurry of scribbles, chaotic lines that darted and tangled until the entire section of the page was covered in agitated strokes. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but she kept drawing, as though exercising her fear and frustration on the paper. Nathan hovered, torn between stepping in and letting Emma handle it. He ultimately stayed back, trusting the process. Finally, Bella's hand stilled, and she stared at the stormy mass of scribbles. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she brushed it away with the back of her hand. Emma reached for a colored pencil of bright yellow. "Let's add a little sun," she said softly, sketching a radiant circle that cut through the gray. She wasn't sure if Bella would react positively, but after a long moment, the girl timidly took a pink pencil and drew a small blossom in the corner. Nathan exhaled a slow breath, relief evident in his expression. Though Bella remained silent, that pink blossom felt like a tiny sign of hope amid the storm. Emma gently nudged the scattered pencils into a pile and placed them back in the box. She left a few favorites out, hoping Bella might continue if she wished. Her heart pounded with the realization that, although progress was real, it was fragile, like a budding flower caught in the wind. Early the next morning, Emma arrived at the mansion carrying a small box of freshly sharpened colored pencils and a few soft pastel sticks. She'd begun to notice that Bella gravitated toward different mediums, depending on her mood. When Bella felt anxious, she clutched pencil and paper with a rigid grip, but on calmer days, she reached for gentler materials like charcoal or pastels. Emma wanted to be ready for whatever mood greeted her today. Nathan's mansion felt more welcoming than before, perhaps because Emma now moved through its corridors with purposeful familiarity. She passed the foyer's grand staircase, exchanging a cordial nod with Margaret, who was busy tidying a side table. The faint scent of baking bread drifted in from the kitchen, suggesting Andrew was already at work. When Emma stepped into the studio, she discovered Bella there, alone, flipping through a stack of coloring pages Emma had left out. The girl looked up briefly, then turned her focus back to the pages. Emma's heart fluttered with cautious excitement. Bella's presence in the studio, without coaxing, felt like a small victory in itself. "Good morning, Bella," Emma greeted softly, setting her supplies on a side table. She pulled a stool closer to where Bella sat, careful to leave enough space so as not to overwhelm her. "I brought new pencils. They're all different shades. Some are metallic, some are neon. I thought you might like to try them." Bella ran her fingertips over a blank sheet. Though she didn't speak, Emma sensed a flicker of curiosity. She watched as Bella picked up one of the metallic pencils, a pearly silver, turning it in her small hands to catch the light. Emma waited, letting Bella set the pace. For a few moments, Bella didn't draw. She simply held the pencil, as if weighing its usefulness. Then she gave a single, tentative stroke, creating a shimmering line. Encouraged, Emma picked up a metallic blue pencil and added a swirl next to Bella's line, making a simple pattern. Bella paused, observed the swirl, and added her own curved flourish. Together, they built a loose, meandering design that glinted whenever the overhead light hit it. Emma quietly relished this cooperative dance, remembering when Bella's fingers trembled just holding a paintbrush. Each shared stroke felt like a conversation without words, a subtle shift in the silence that had dominated Bella's world. It was almost like hearing Bella murmur a tentative sentence for the first time. Partway through their drawing, Nathan stepped in, holding a phone in his hand. His tie was slightly askew, and faint worry lines etched his brow. When he noticed Bella hunched over the metallic pencils, his expression softened. "Good morning," he said, directing a gentle nod toward both of them. "I just got a call I need to handle, but I wanted to check in." His gaze settled on Bella's design. Emma detected pride in his eyes, as if he were seeing his daughter create something beautiful for the first time in ages. Emma offered a warm smile. "She seems interested in these new pencils. We're just experimenting." Nathan's phone buzzed again. He sighed, stepping out after a parting glance that lingered on Bella. Emma sensed how torn he was. Responsibilities tugged him away, yet he yearned to be part of his daughter's progress. Left in peaceful silence once more, Bella and Emma continued to fill the page with intertwined lines. Eventually, Bella set the pencil aside and stared at the paper. Emma waited, unsure if the session was over. But then Bella turned to a fresh sheet and placed a pastel stick, baby pink, on its surface. She rubbed it in slow, circular motions, creating a soft blush on the page. Emma tried not to react too enthusiastically, allowing Bella to keep the feeling of autonomy. Inside, however, relief spread through her. These quiet sessions seemed to be unlocking emotions Bella had kept under lock and key. Over the next half hour, Bella covered the page in muted pinks and purples, layering delicate smudges. By the end, the paper resembled a gentle sunrise. Emma couldn't help but marvel that a child once afraid to mark the paper now confidently explored color. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps disrupted the calm. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, holding a stack of folders. She smiled apologetically. "Emma, do you have a moment?" "Nathan asked if you could help with something." Bella's hands stiffened on the pastel. Emma gently placed her own palm near Bella's wrist, not touching, but close enough to reassure her. "I'll be right back, Bella." "Okay," she said softly. Bella tensed but remained where she was, turning her attention back to the pastel drawing. Emma followed Evelyn into the hallway, glancing over her shoulder once to see Bella fully absorbed in her artwork. She hoped stepping away wouldn't break the delicate flow they'd established. Still, she reassured herself that Bella needed independence, too. Evelyn guided Emma to a side office. "Nathan has a quick request," she explained, opening the door. Emma braced herself for whatever business-related question might await, a stark contrast to the gentle pastel world she'd just left behind. But she reminded herself this was all part of the evolving dynamic, Bella's journey to heal, Nathan's attempts to balance work and fatherhood, and her own role, bridging the two. Evelyn ushered Emma into a modest-sized office adjacent to the main living areas. It was less opulent than other parts of the house, decorated with bookshelves and a large oak desk. Nathan stood by a window, phone pressed to his ear. He waved them in, murmuring a quick goodbye to whoever was on the line. "Sorry to pull you away," he said, setting the phone down. "This won't take long. I've got a meeting later, and I need your input on something." Emma raised an eyebrow. "My input?" She glanced around, unsure why he'd need an art teacher's advice on a business matter. Nathan motioned for her to sit in one of the leather chairs facing the desk, then took a seat behind it. Evelyn remained by the doorway, carefully sorting files. Emma felt a flicker of tension. This was a far cry from the gentle atmosphere of the studio. "Evelyn tells me you've been exploring illustration work outside of teaching," Nathan began, leaning forward. "You mentioned something about children's books, right?" Emma's heart skipped. She hadn't expected her personal aspirations to come up so abruptly. "Yes, I've been trying to publish my own picture book. I've sent out queries, but so far I've only received rejections or half-hearted feedback." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "I have some acquaintances in publishing. It's not my main field, of course, but Donovan Tech invests in a variety of media ventures. I was thinking maybe I could connect you with one of our contacts, someone who might appreciate your artistic style." Emma felt a rush of hope, quickly followed by caution. She'd always dreamed of having her work seen, but the idea of relying on Nathan for help carried its own complexities. Would it be a genuine opportunity or a subtle means of controlling her situation? "That would be amazing," she said slowly, trying to gauge his motives. "But are you sure it's not out of your way?" He waved off her concern. "I want to see your work succeed. Bella's been responding to your lessons, and I can see how much your art means to you." He glanced at Evelyn, who handed over a slim folder. "Just look this over. It's a small publishing imprint we have ties with. They cater to niche markets, including children's literature." Emma accepted the folder, her mouth suddenly dry. She glanced at Evelyn, who offered a polite smile. "We can arrange a meeting," Evelyn said softly. "No promises, but it's a step you might not get otherwise." "Thank you," Emma managed, holding the folder in her lap. Relief and excitement warred with the nagging voice in her head that cautioned about mixing personal ambitions with her arrangement at the mansion. She recalled how easily circumstances could shift, yet the opportunity was too meaningful to dismiss outright. Before she could say more, the phone on Nathan's desk buzzed. He pressed the intercom button. "Yes?" Margaret's gentle voice carried through. "Mr. Donovan, Bella has come to the kitchen. She's, rummaging in the cabinets. I think she might be looking for her old paints." Nathan's eyes widened. He looked at Emma, a mixture of astonishment and excitement flashing across his face. Emma felt her pulse race. Bella actively searching for paints was a significant sign of progress, perhaps the biggest leap yet. She rose from the chair, the folder tucked under her arm. "I'll go check on her," she said, her heart pounding with a new sense of purpose. Nathan stood as well, following her toward the door. "I'll come too," he said, pausing only to glance at the folder in Emma's hands. "Keep that. Let me know what you decide. No pressure." As they walked through the corridor, Emma's mind churned with conflicting thoughts. Her dream was finally within reach. She could practically see the pages of her illustrated stories coming to life in print. Yet she felt an undercurrent of unease at the idea of accepting such help from Nathan. It was one thing to teach Bella in lieu of paying for a dented car. It was another to let him shape her professional future. They reached the kitchen, where Bella stood on tiptoe, opening a lower cabinet. She froze when she saw them enter, then looked down, as if self-conscious about being caught. Emma offered a gentle smile. "Were you looking for paints, Bella?" Bella didn't speak, but she clutched two small watercolor tubes in her hand, one red and one yellow. Emma could see a flicker of determination in the girl's eyes. She hoped the moment wouldn't slip away. Glancing at Nathan, Emma sensed that, at least for now, Bella's progress overshadowed any moral quandaries she faced. The folder pressed against her side served as a reminder of her own dream and of how each step forward, whether in Bella's healing or Emma's career, came with its own complex set of choices. Later that week, Emma found herself once again setting up in the studio, carefully laying out small plastic cups of water and brushes for a watercolor session. Bella, who'd shown interest in painting, was due to arrive any moment. Margaret mentioned Bella had eaten breakfast quickly, as though eager for the day's lesson. While waiting, Emma couldn't help replaying her conversation with Nathan about her potential publishing connection. She'd read through the folder he'd given her, and the opportunity seemed almost too good to be true. Direct contact with an editor who specialized in children's books. She thought about how many times she'd mailed proposals, never hearing back or receiving curt rejections. The possibility of skipping that line felt exhilarating, yet frightening. Before she could dwell too long on her dilemma, Bella appeared in the doorway. The child held her stuffed cat in one hand and a single watercolor tube in the other. Blue this time. She took a hesitant step inside, biting her lower lip. Emma offered a smile and gestured to the table. "Hi, Bella. I'm glad you're here. I've got everything ready if you want to paint." She kept her voice encouraging, but not overly enthusiastic. Experience taught her that Bella preferred subtlety. Bella approached, placing her stuffed cat gently on a nearby chair. She uncapped the tube of blue paint and squeezed a small amount onto a palette. With cautious deliberation, she dipped a brush into the water, then into the paint, finally onto the thick paper Emma had taped down. A bold smear of blue expanded across the surface. Bella paused, as though startled by the color's intensity. "You can add water to lighten it," Emma suggested, demonstrating on her own paper how a few extra drops could turn the dense blue into a dreamy wash. Bella watched closely, then tried it herself. A small, satisfied nod seemed to indicate she liked the effect. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the rhythmic sound of brushstrokes filling the air. Bella crafted free-form shapes that seemed almost oceanic, waves or clouds. Emma subtly guided her, talking about how different brushes made different textures. Bella didn't speak, but she mimicked Emma's techniques with surprising ease. Then Nathan entered, a gentle but concerned expression on his face. Emma glanced up, wondering if something was wrong. Bella stiffened slightly, but didn't stop painting. "Emma," Nathan began, stepping closer, "I need your help with a small problem." She set her brush aside, noticing Bella's shoulders tense at the interruption. "Is everything okay?" Nathan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Business issue, plus an event I'm expected to attend. My presence might be required in New York for a couple of days. I don't want to disrupt Bella's progress, especially now. Could you stay here, in the guest suite? That way, she can keep up her lessons while I'm away." Emma's heart skipped a beat. The thought of staying overnight in Nathan's mansion felt like uncharted territory. She also worried about boundaries. After all, this was a professional arrangement. Sort of, but she looked at Bella, who was painting with such focus, and realized how jarring it might be if lessons suddenly stopped. She hesitated. "I guess I could rearrange my other sessions for a couple of days. But are you sure Bella will be comfortable with that?" Nathan nodded. "Margaret and Evelyn will be here. You won't be alone. I'll only be gone 2 nights at most." His gaze flickered to Bella's painting. "I don't want her to lose this momentum." Emma felt a tug in her chest. "All right," she agreed softly. "If Bella's okay with it, I'm willing to help." Nathan seemed relieved. He gave Bella a reassuring smile, but she continued painting, avoiding eye contact. Emma suspected Bella heard every word, even if she didn't show it. As Nathan left to finalize details, thunder rumbled in the distance, signaling an approaching storm. Bella flinched at the deep roll, her brush faltering on the paper. Emma gently reached for her own brush, adding small arcs of bright yellow in the corner of her painting. She glanced at Bella. "Sometimes I add sun to remind myself the storm will pass." Suddenly, lightning flashed outside, followed by a crack of thunder that shook the windows. Bella dropped her brush, water splattering across her painting. Her breath quickened, and she backed away from the table, eyes wide with panic. Emma stood up calmly and walked over, placing her hands out as a gentle offering. "It's okay," Emma said, voice low. "You're safe in here." "That was just thunder." Bella trembled, tears welling in her eyes. It was only the second time Emma had seen her cry so visibly. Unsure of how much comfort Bella would accept, Emma knelt a short distance away. Without warning, Bella bolted out of the room, footsteps echoing down the hallway. Emma chased after her, calling her name softly. She found Bella in the living room, huddled against a couch, clutching her stuffed cat as her chest rose and fell in quick bursts. Emma approached gingerly, remembering not to corner her. Kneeling, Emma waited until Bella's teary gaze met hers. She pulled a small piece of blank paper from her pocket. "Maybe we can draw out the thunder together," she whispered. "Show it who's boss." Bella sniffed, hugging the stuffed cat. The flicker of fear remained in her eyes, but she hesitantly reached out for the paper. Emma extended a colored pencil, determined to help Bella face this storm, both outside and within, any way she could. Once the thunder subsided, Bella let Emma guide her back to the studio, where they spent several minutes scribbling fierce, jagged shapes that represented the storm. Bella's strokes were wild, almost frantic at first, but gradually they grew more controlled. Eventually, she paused, peering at the chaotic swirl of pencil lines. Emma took a bright yellow pastel and added a small sun in the corner, her signature gesture of hope. Bella watched, tears drying on her cheeks, then nodded quietly. That night, the storm outside raged on. Rain pelted the windows in sheets, and the wind howled through the tall oaks. As agreed, Emma stayed in the guest suite, a comfortable space with a large window overlooking the back garden. The bed felt too luxurious compared to her tiny apartment. She lay awake, reflecting on Bella's progress and her own uncertainties about accepting help with publishing. Close to midnight, a gentle knock on her door startled her. She stepped out of bed, heart pounding, and opened it to find Margaret. The older woman clutched a robe around her shoulders, her face lined with concern. "I'm sorry to wake you," Margaret said softly, "but Bella's having a hard time sleeping. She's been crying for a while, and I can't seem to calm her." Emma followed Margaret down the hallway to Bella's bedroom. She found the girl curled under her blankets, knees drawn up to her chest. Lightning flashed, illuminating her tear-streaked face. A stuffed cat lay abandoned on the floor, as though even its presence couldn't ward off her fear. Approaching slowly, Emma knelt by the bed. "Bella," she said in a low voice. "It's Emma. The storm is loud, but we're safe inside. Do you want to draw, or maybe just talk a little?" She felt a pang, realizing Bella wouldn't answer. Still, the offer stood. For a moment, Bella didn't move. Then, inch by inch, she slid closer to Emma's side of the bed, her eyes locked on the hallway light behind them. Emma took a calming breath. "I can stay here for a while," she added. "If that helps." Margaret hovered in the doorway, relief in her eyes. Bella looked at Emma, her gaze uncertain but pleading for reassurance. Emma placed a sketch pad on the mattress, flipping to a blank page. "We can scribble the thunder away, or just doodle something else. Whatever you need, Bella." Hesitation. Then Bella's small fingers reached for a pencil, pressing it lightly on the paper. She scratched out a harsh line, then another. Emma recognized them as jagged shapes, similar to the ones Bella had drawn earlier, but this time the strokes were less frantic. A tentative calm seemed to settle in Bella's posture. Emma thought of the earlier meltdown, the painted storm, and the swirl of confusion in Bella's eyes. She wanted desperately for Bella to speak, to release whatever sorrow she held locked inside. But if silence was Bella's only way to process, Emma would respect that. She picked up a pastel and added softer shapes to the page. Together, they transformed the spiky lines into strange, dreamlike images of clouds with glimmers of light. After a few minutes, Bella leaned back, the pencil dropping onto the blanket. Her breathing slowed. Emma whispered, "You're doing so well. It's all right to be scared, but you're not alone." Although Bella's eyes glistened with lingering tears, her grip on the blankets loosened. Margaret tiptoed forward, draping an extra quilt over Bella's feet. She mouthed a silent thank you to Emma. Emma offered a faint smile in return, staying by Bella's side until the child's eyelids grew heavy. When Bella finally drifted to sleep, Emma carefully eased out of the room, her own emotions whirling. Back in the guest suite, Emma was too restless to sleep. She paced by the window, watching lightning fork across the sky. The storm, though quieter now, still rumbled in the distance. She let her thoughts wander to Nathan, traveling for his business commitment in New York, unaware of the night's drama. She wondered if Bella's crisis had been triggered as much by his absence as by the raging weather. Eventually, exhaustion pulled at her. Lying in bed, she clung to a sense of gratitude for the glimmers of progress Bella had made, but a deeper reflection also nagged at her. In helping Bella face her fears, was Emma also confronting her own doubts about her dream, her self-worth, and the unexpected path she now walked with the Donovan family? Morning brought clear skies and sunshine that sparkled on the rain-soaked garden. Emma woke early, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Though she'd barely rested, she felt an urgency to check on Bella. After a quick shower and a change of clothes, she'd packed a modest overnight bag. Emma headed downstairs. In the kitchen, she found Andrew at the stove making scrambled eggs. The chef offered her a warm smile, pointing to a plate on the counter. "Morning. Thought you might like something hot. Ms. Bella's still asleep." but she seemed calmer after you visited her room." Emma nodded, grateful. "Thank you," she replied, picking at the eggs. She wasn't very hungry, but forced a few bites, knowing she needed energy. While she ate, Andrew shared small anecdotes about the house during calmer times. A timid laugh from Bella at the dinner table, the day Julie taught Bella to bake cookies. Emma listened, imagining a brighter household. Margaret joined them, tying her apron. "I checked on Bella a moment ago." "She's still in bed but not crying," Margaret said with quiet relief. "You must have done something right last night." Emma was about to respond when the faint sound of footsteps made them all turn. Bella appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair mussed from sleep. She wore soft pajamas and held her stuffed cat by a loose paw. A timid expression flickered across her face when she spotted Emma, Andrew, and Margaret all looking her way. "Good morning, Bella," Emma said gently, pushing her plate aside so Bella could come closer. Bella hesitated, then shuffled toward the table, glancing at the leftover breakfast. Margaret placed a small glass of juice in front of her. Bella took it with a slight nod of thanks. Still no words, but the gesture spoke volumes. Andrew quietly slipped out to let them have some space. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a small notepad, scribbling a quick doodle of a cartoon sun, remembering the stormy night before. She slid the sketch toward Bella. "I drew this when I woke up to celebrate the sunshine." Bella studied the drawing, her gaze lingering. Emma's chest tightened at how meaningful these tiny interactions had become. Everything Bella did, every look, every nod, felt like an important clue to her emotional landscape. Before they could settle further, Nathan's voice emanated from the hallway. "Bella, Emma?" He appeared in the doorway, coat still draped over his arm, a travel bag slung over his shoulder. He seemed relieved to see them at the table together. "You're back already?" Margaret asked in surprise. Nathan set down his bag, running a hand through his hair. "The business meeting ended earlier than expected, so I caught a late flight. I couldn't stop thinking about Bella." "How is she?" Emma exchanged a glance with Bella, who stared at her father with a guarded expression. "She had a rough night," Emma answered softly, "but I think she's feeling a bit better now." Nathan exhaled, the relief palpable in his eyes as he approached Bella. He crouched beside her chair, resting a hand gently on the table so as not to startle her. "I'm sorry I wasn't here." His voice wavered with genuine regret. Bella lowered her head, clutching her stuffed cat tighter. The moment felt raw, almost too personal. Emma rose and busied herself by rinsing her plate in the sink, giving them space. Margaret took the hint as well, stepping aside to check the pantry. When Emma glanced back, Nathan had taken Bella's hand. She wasn't pulling away, though her posture remained tense. Emma felt a pang in her chest, seeing father and daughter struggle with so much unspoken emotion. A minute later, Bella gently slipped her hand free and stood, walking out of the kitchen toward the stairs. Nathan didn't follow, letting her go. Emma turned off the faucet and dried her hands. "She's making progress," Emma ventured. "She grabbed paints on her own. She stayed in the studio. She still hasn't spoken, but there's definitely a change in her willingness to engage." Nathan nodded, raking a hand through his hair again. "I can see it. I just wish I knew what else to do." He straightened, pulling himself together. "Thank you for staying overnight, Emma. It means more to me than I can say." His gratitude reminded Emma of the folder in her room. She thought about the moral dilemma nagging her, whether to accept his publishing connection, yet she also felt the sincerity in his thanks, the genuine concern for his daughter. In that moment, she decided to set aside her inner debate and focus on Bella's well-being. Over the next hour, she helped Margaret tidy the studio, gathering scattered papers and rinsing used brushes. Nathan, having changed into more casual clothes, joined them after a brief phone call. The air felt lighter with him present, as though the house recognized its master's return. Standing by the studio window, Emma gazed out at the backyard oak. The morning sun cast dappled light on the grass, and she recalled how Bella once sat there, silent and withdrawn. Now, the girl was participating in small but significant ways, painting, exploring colors, and even seeking Emma's presence during frightening moments. Each step felt like a rung on a ladder, leading Bella higher toward self-expression. Nathan approached, his voice quiet. "I'm committed to doing whatever it takes. If it means more lessons, more overnights, or even therapy in tandem with the art, I'll do it." Emma nodded, touched by his determination. Yet she also felt the weight of her own role in their lives. She was no longer just an art tutor. She had become a kind of bridge, offering Bella a path toward healing and giving Nathan hope for reconnection with his daughter. All the while, her own dreams waited in the background, stirring and growing stronger with each stroke of color that brought Bella closer to breaking her silence. Early morning light streamed through the studio windows, revealing floating dust motes in the otherwise still air. Emma was positioning clean canvases along the wall when she heard faint footsteps. Turning, she caught sight of Bella, who had slipped into the room wearing a simple lilac dress and clutching her stuffed cat. The child paused, glancing at the canvases as though they were portals to another world. "Good morning," Emma said softly, motioning Bella forward. She set out a small table with watercolors and brushes, wanting to keep the atmosphere gentle. For the past few days, Bella had shown steady interest in painting shapes, practicing color mixing, and occasionally scribbling lines that suggested figures or places Emma couldn't quite identify. Nathan appeared moments later, standing in the doorway with arms folded. It struck Emma how much had changed since that first day. He no longer hovered with the same rigid apprehension, though concern still flickered in his gaze. She sensed that father and daughter both stood on the threshold of something monumental, their unspoken grief simmering just below the surface. Bella approached a canvas propped on an easel, pressing a hand tentatively against its blank surface. Her gaze darted back to Emma. Without speaking, she reached for a paintbrush, took a deep breath, and dipped the bristles into a gentle wash of pale yellow paint. She stroked the canvas tentatively, leaving a thin band of sunny color behind. It was such a simple motion, but to Emma, it carried the weight of 1,000 words Bella couldn't yet say. Nathan cleared his throat, stepping closer. "Looks like you're in a bright mood this morning, Bella," he remarked, voice low. Bella didn't speak, but the corner of her mouth twitched as though she acknowledged his presence. Emma noted the subtle sign of connection. Bella wasn't recoiling or fleeing. As Bella continued painting, Emma moved behind her, offering gentle suggestions. "If you add a bit more water, the color will spread in softer edges," she whispered, demonstrating on her own small scrap of paper. Bella tried it, watching the yellow paint fan out across the canvas like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then the unexpected happened. Bella dipped the brush in a darker hue, something close to navy blue, and pressed it onto the yellow swath. The colors bled together into a stormy green, swirling in a spiral shape. Bella's breathing quickened, and she drew a second swirl. Her expression turned pensive, her body taut. "I wonder what that shape might become," Emma said gently, sensing Bella's rising tension. "Sometimes I like to imagine it's the wind blowing through a field." Bella's eyes widened, her breathing ragged. She dropped the brush with a clatter, stepping back from the canvas as though it had become too much to bear. Emma heard her own heartbeat thudding in her ears, and she noticed Nathan stiffen. "You're okay," Emma assured Bella. "It's just paint. We can shape it into something else, or leave it as it is. No rules." That was the moment Bella's composure fractured. Tears slid down her cheeks as she stared at the swirling colors. She let out a faint, desperate sound, a small gasp that might have been the beginning of a word. Emma froze, uncertain how to respond without frightening the girl further. Nathan gently tried to place a hand on Bella's shoulder, but she jerked away, turning sharply toward the far side of the studio. There on a low table sat a framed photograph Emma hadn't noticed before. It showed Bella and her mother, Julie, seated on a picnic blanket in some sunlit park. Bella was younger, her hair shorter, a wide grin on her face. Her mother, an elegant woman with soft brown eyes, had one arm around Bella's waist. The photo radiated warmth and togetherness. Emma realized Bella must have found it somewhere in the house and brought it here. The swirl of colors on the canvas, the brightness dissolving into stormy green. Perhaps it triggered memories of Julie's absence. Bella let out a muffled sob, hugging her stuffed cat in a rigid clutch. Nathan's voice quivered as he spoke. "Bella, sweetheart, I'm sorry you're hurting." He crossed the room, kneeling in front of his daughter. "I miss her too, every day." Seeing them both grapple with raw grief, Emma felt her own eyes sting. She understood that this was the confrontation they'd been dreading, facing Julie's memory head-on. The swirl of paint on the canvas seemed like a reflection of Bella's tumultuous emotions. After a moment of tense silence, Bella tore her gaze from the photo, looking uncertainly at Emma. Emma offered a trembling smile. "What if we gently brush water over that swirl, let it soften," she suggested, voice hushed. "We can blend the colors until they feel more peaceful." Though Bella didn't speak, she lifted her brush from the floor, her hand shaking. She dipped it in water and pressed it onto the stormy swirl. Slowly, the paint spread outward, dissolving into gentler, paler hues. Emma rested a comforting hand near Bella's back, not quite touching but radiating support. Nathan watched, eyes damp, as Bella delicately transformed the swirling chaos. The sight hit Emma like a wave. This was the emotional core of it all, the wound that needed tending. She sensed that healing might require more than painting, but for now, each stroke of the brush felt like a step toward understanding. For both Bella and Nathan, that afternoon, the sun climbed higher, casting a mellow glow across the Donovan mansion. Emma decided to lead Bella outdoors for a little break from the intensity of the studio. She gathered a few crayons, a pad of sketch paper, and a bottle of water. Bella followed, her steps slow and guarded, clutching the stuffed cat by one worn ear. They strolled to the oak tree in the backyard, where Bella had first silently observed Emma's drawings. The grass was soft underfoot, and a late spring breeze rustled the leaves overhead. Emma set out a blanket and invited Bella to sit. To her relief, the child settled on the blanket, though her posture was still tense. "Let's take in the fresh air," Emma suggested, unfolding the sketch pad. "Sometimes nature can calm the mind." Bella glanced around as though searching for something or someone. Emma realized she was likely looking for Nathan. After the emotional painting session earlier, he'd retreated indoors to handle a work call, giving Bella some space to process. Emma offered a reassuring smile. "Your dad will be out soon," she said softly. Bella's gaze flicked to Emma, then to the crayons. She picked one up, a deep green, and drew a meandering line on the paper. Emma chose a pale yellow and added a small curve to complement Bella's line. Together, they formed a winding, abstract path. As they worked, Emma noticed Bella's breathing settle into a gentler rhythm. A few minutes later, she spotted movement near the house. Nathan stepped out, talking quietly on his phone, his tie hanging loose. When he saw them under the oak, he ended the call, approaching with slow steps. He hesitated at the edge of the blanket, as if unsure whether his presence might upset Bella again. Yet Bella's shoulders didn't tense this time. She kept drawing, layering green lines over the shapes Emma had made. Nathan lowered himself to sit on the grass, his posture stiff. "How's it going?" he asked quietly. Glancing at the evolving sketch, Bella didn't acknowledge him with words, but she allowed him to watch, a subtle sign of acceptance. Emma leaned toward Nathan, speaking in a hushed tone. She had a difficult moment earlier. I think seeing the photo of her mother triggered something, but she's calmer now. Nathan exhaled, raking a hand through his hair. I appreciate everything you're doing. I wish she'd talk. Give her time, Emma murmured. She's expressing more now than she did when we first met. That's progress. As if to prove Emma's point, Bella reached for a black crayon and carefully drew two small stick figures at the end of the winding line. One taller, one smaller. She then placed a red heart between them, though it was lopsided. Emma's breath caught. Was Bella depicting herself and Nathan? Nathan seemed to realize it too, his eyes glistening with emotion. That's nice, Bella, he managed, voice unsteady. They remained that way, three figures on a blanket, a swirl of crayons capturing unspoken feelings. Emma marveled at how a child who hadn't uttered a word in 2 years could convey so much through scribbled lines and heartfelt symbols. Eventually, clouds rolled in, a hint of rain on the breeze. Bella tapped the red heart she'd drawn, then looked up at Emma. The gesture was fleeting but powerful, an acknowledgement that she felt safe enough to share something of herself. Emma nodded, her voice catching. You're doing great, Bella. Rain began to patter softly against the leaves. Nathan rose first, extending a hand to help Emma up. Bella stood on her own, clutching the drawing. They hurried inside just as the drizzle turned heavier, the oak tree's branches rustling with droplets. In the foyer, Bella handed her crayon drawing to Emma, who held it carefully, unsure of the child's intent. Bella's gaze darted to her father, then back to Emma. Emma offered a soft smile. Would you like me to keep this safe for you, or would you rather keep it in your room? Bella paused, seeming to weigh the options. Finally, she placed her stuffed cat in Emma's other hand, then pointed back to the drawing in Emma's grasp. Her meaning was ambiguous, but Emma sensed she might be asking Emma to guard these treasured items. Her stuffed cat and the drawing. Unsure but moved, Emma nodded. All right, she whispered, placing the drawing somewhere safe as Bella reclaimed her toy. Nathan watched from a few steps away, his expression torn between joy and sorrow. Emma knew he was struggling with the fact that Bella trusted her, a relative stranger, enough to share something meaningful, yet still said nothing to her own father. Emma's heart ached for him, but she also recognized that Bella's journey would unfold at its own pace. As the rain drummed on the roof, they drifted into the living room. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, but Bella didn't panic. Instead, she curled up on the couch, the stuffed cat snug in her arms, and stared out at the grey sky. Emma quietly sat nearby, ready to comfort if needed. Nathan took the chair opposite them, leaning forward as if he wanted to bridge the gap between him and his daughter. The hush in the room was heavy, yet strangely peaceful. Emma sensed they were on the verge of a profound shift. Each new drawing or gesture, another step toward the day Bella might finally speak what was on her heart. That same evening, Emma retreated to the guest suite with a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. Bella's unspoken progress weighed on her mind, and she couldn't stop replaying the image of those small stick figures and the crooked red heart. She felt warmth at how far Bella had come. But she also sensed the unresolved tension in Nathan's gaze each time Bella shared something with Emma, rather than him. Sitting on the bed, Emma opened her own sketchbook, which had become a silent companion throughout her days at the mansion. She flipped through pages of rough illustrations, ideas for children's stories, doodles of Bella's expressions, and even quick portraits of Nathan when she noticed him lost in thought. Her cheeks warmed at the realization that she'd drawn him more times than she'd intended. the lines of his sharp jaw and searching eyes replicated in gentle pencil strokes. She glanced toward the desk, where the folder Nathan had given her still rested. It contained the contact details for a children's book editor. She'd drafted an email, but it remained unsent in her outbox, a testament to her hesitation. Her conscience nagged. Did she want to accept an opportunity that might feel like favoritism or a debt owed to Nathan? Yet, she couldn't deny how badly she wanted to see her illustrations published. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. She cracked open the door to find Evelyn Sterling. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Evelyn said, holding a mug of chamomile tea. "Margaret mentioned you seemed worn out, and I thought this might help." Emma smiled gratefully, letting Evelyn enter. "Thank you. It's been intense." Evelyn placed the mug on the bedside table, taking a seat in a nearby chair. "Yes, it has. But you're doing a remarkable job. I never thought I'd see Bella approach art again the way she has these past weeks." Emma sipped the tea, letting the soothing warmth ease her nerves. "She's an incredible child. She just needs someone to see her for who she is, not who she used to be or who she's supposed to be." Evelyn nodded, her sharp eyes sweeping over the open sketchbook. She studied the drawings of Bella, then paused on one that loosely resembled Nathan, albeit in a softer, more introspective style. A knowing smile tugged at her lips. "You have quite the talent, Emma," she said, her tone light but significant. "Have you considered what it means for you personally to be here day after day, bridging this family's wounds?" Emma fiddled with the edge of the blanket. "Sometimes I feel I'm in over my head," she admitted. "I never planned on, well, any of this. But it feels too important to turn away from." Evelyn's gaze was kind. "Nathan may come across as impenetrable, but losing his wife broke something in him. Seeing Bella shut down afterward only compounded his guilt. You're helping them both. Still, it's clear you have dreams of your own. Don't lose sight of them." Emma swallowed, thinking of the unopened folder. "About that, Nathan gave me a publishing contact. I can't decide if I should pursue it. It feels complicated, mixing that with everything I'm doing for Bella." Evelyn leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "Let me ask you this. If Bella's mother were here and she saw your art helping her child, do you think she'd want you to hold yourself back? Or would she want you to shine as brightly as possible for Bella and for yourself?" The question made Emma's throat tighten. She imagined Julie as a supportive presence, encouraging Bella's caretaker to follow her own passion, not stifle it out of guilt. Emma exhaled slowly. "I guess she'd want me to go for it." Evelyn smiled. "You already know your answer. Don't let fear of an unspoken debt stop you from achieving what you've worked so hard for." After Evelyn left, Emma closed her door, mind whirling. She felt a spark of courage. Setting the tea aside, she opened her laptop. Her draft email to the editor glowed on the screen, the cursor blinking as though nudging her to act. With a bracing breath, she attached a few of her best illustrations, ones that had been inspired by her journey with Bella, and pressed send. A low hum of relief mingled with apprehension as she watched the message vanish from her outbox. She placed a hand on her chest, feeling the flutter of excitement. Regardless of the outcome, she had taken a stand for herself and her future. Before turning in, she opened her sketchbook to a fresh page. She quickly sketched the oak tree in the backyard, where Bella and she had spent so many quiet sessions. This time, she added 2 small figures near its trunk, one taller, one smaller, and gave them both big, hopeful eyes. It wasn't a perfect drawing, but in that moment, it felt like a promise that, with patience and courage, there was room for everyone's healing to take root. The next morning, brought a renewed sense of purpose. Emma woke to a notification on her phone, an email reply from the editor she'd contacted the night before. Her stomach fluttered. Though the subject line was vague, she couldn't resist reading it immediately. The editor expressed polite interest, asking Emma to schedule a meeting to discuss her illustrations further. It wasn't a guarantee of publication, but the door was opening a crack. Buoyed by the news, Emma threw on a light sweater and headed downstairs. She found Bella seated at the kitchen table, finishing a bowl of cereal. Margaret hovered nearby, offering a motherly smile to Emma. "Good morning. Bella's already had her breakfast," Margaret reported, patting the child's shoulder lightly. "She said, well, she didn't say anything, but she gestured that she wanted to paint again today." Emma's heart soared. "That's wonderful," she said, exchanging a look of excitement with Margaret. "I'll set up in the studio." "You ready, Bella?" The child nodded once, a small but deliberate movement. Nathan appeared, coffee mug in hand. He looked more relaxed than usual. "Morning," he greeted. "I heard Bella's heading for another painting session. Mind if I watch for a bit?" He glanced at Bella for any sign of discomfort. She blinked at him, not turning away. Emma took that as a yes. They made their way to the studio, where Emma arranged a canvas on the easel. This time, Bella picked up a pencil first, sketching faint outlines. A circle at the center, lines radiating outward. Emma recognized the shape as similar to the swirling patterns from before. But now Bella's lines seemed more controlled, less frantic. As Bella worked, Emma noticed Nathan standing at the edge of the studio, eyes locked on his daughter's every move. It was a delicate dance. He wanted to be supportive, yet feared startling Bella's fragile progress. Emma decided to invite him in more actively. "Nathan," she called softly, "could you hand me that set of brushes on the table?" Nathan froze a moment, then stepped forward to retrieve them. Approaching Bella, he gently placed the brushes near her elbow. Bella glanced at him for a second, then resumed drawing. Though she didn't push him away, Emma could sense her heightened tension. Still, the fact that Bella allowed him so close was meaningful. Encouraged, Emma stood beside Bella. "Would you like some color now?" she asked. Bella paused, tapping the pencil lightly on the canvas, then took a brush with a tiny smile that flickered across her face before disappearing again. She dipped it in a pastel orange, painting over her pencil lines in soft strokes. Nathan inhaled sharply, stepping closer. Emma held her breath, worried Bella might withdraw. But instead, Bella picked up a second brush and offered it to him, her eyes flicking to meet his. Emma felt her chest tighten in astonishment. Bella was inviting her father to join. The moment felt charged. Nathan tentatively took the brush, dipping it into a shade of pale blue. Beside Bella's orange swirls, he added a gentle wave of color. They painted side by side, father and daughter, combining hues in a tentative duet. Emma stepped back, hardly daring to breathe, overwhelmed by the sight of them sharing the canvas. Her gaze fell on Bella's face. A quiet intensity etched her features. She seemed to be testing the waters of trust, seeing if her father could handle her delicate world. Nathan's expression mirrored her own wonder. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but blinked them back, not wanting to break the fragile spell. At one point, Bella pressed her brush against the canvas a bit too firmly, splattering a small blob of paint. She flinched, as though expecting a scolding. Nathan gently dabbed the blot with a rag, blending it into the rest of the painting. He offered Bella a reassuring nod, and she continued painting. Emma realized her hands were shaking, the emotion of the scene almost overwhelming. She recalled the heartbreak that had first brought her to this house, her busted Civic, his dented Aston Martin, the improbable bargain. Now, as she watched father and daughter share a creative moment, it felt like all those difficulties had led them here to a point where healing was no longer a distant dream. The spell eventually broke when Bella pulled away from the canvas, setting her brush down. She stared at the swirls of orange and blue merging in soft gradients. Nathan hesitated, then reached out to place a gentle hand on her shoulder. Bella didn't move away. Emma felt tears threaten to spill as she witnessed the father-daughter bond repairing itself, stroke by stroke. Quietly, Emma gathered the leftover paint, giving them space. She didn't want to intrude on the closeness they were forging. In her heart, she wished that this convergence of color and courage might be the doorway through which Bella could one day speak again, not in paint, but with her voice. Later that afternoon, a subdued but palpable energy filled the mansion. Bella had retreated to her room, possibly to rest after the emotional painting session. Nathan drifted between his office and the studio, occasionally glancing at the fresh canvas that bore the traces of his and Bella's shared artistry. Emma watched him, sensing an inner turmoil that matched her own mix of hope and apprehension. Margaret quietly tidied the living room, humming an old tune under her breath. Evelyn was away running errands, leaving Emma and Nathan in a sort of suspended calm. Eventually, Emma found him standing in front of the canvas, a faint smile on his lips. "It's remarkable," she commented, stepping beside him. The swirls of orange and blue merged in a soft gradient at the center, creating a subtle, glowing point of light. Nathan studied the painting, arms folded across his chest. "I used to think art was an indulgence, something superficial compared to the logic and data of business, but this feels more honest than any spreadsheet I've analyzed." Emma nodded. "Art can be messy. It reveals things you can't always put into words." Nathan exhaled, turning to look at her. "Thank you for guiding her. And me, I suppose." His voice caught. "I've been so lost since Julie's death. I locked myself behind a wall of spreadsheets and phone calls, ignoring how that left Bella alone with her grief." Her heart clenched with empathy. She saw the flicker of guilt in his expression, a guilt that had overshadowed him for 2 years. "You're here now," she said gently. "You're trying. That counts for a lot." Nathan cleared his throat, casting his gaze back to the painting. "Bella reminded me of Julie so much. I couldn't bear to be around her at times. It was like looking into the eyes of a memory that haunted me." He paused, his jaw tightening. Emma sensed he was choosing his words with care. "If it hadn't been for that car accident, I might never have opened up to the possibility of trusting someone else again, letting someone else see our struggles. Maybe Bella would still be locked in her silence, and me with my regrets." Emma touched his arm lightly. "Sometimes the worst moments lead us exactly where we need to go." Silence hung between them, weighted with gratitude and lingering sadness. Emma thought about how her own life had been transformed by that same accident. She now stood on the verge of a potential publishing deal, forging a deep connection with 2 people she'd never have encountered otherwise. They heard a soft sound from the hallway. Turning, they found Bella standing quietly with her stuffed cat. Her eyes flicked between Nathan and Emma, taking in how close they stood. Emma stepped back slightly, not wanting Bella to feel excluded. Nathan, however, moved forward, extending a hand. Bella hesitated, then placed her small fingers in his palm. He guided her toward the painting, pointing to a bright patch of orange. "That's yours," he whispered. "And this," he touched the swirling blue, "that's mine. We made something beautiful together." Bella stared at the canvas, her expression unreadable. Then, all at once, tears slipped down her cheeks and she squeezed Nathan's hand. The intensity of her emotion left Emma breathless. Bella's face contorted as though she might scream or speak, but no words emerged, just a trembling jaw and watery eyes. Nathan knelt, wrapping his arms around his daughter. For a terrifying second, Emma worried Bella would yank free, returning to her shell. Instead, Bella clung to him, sobbing silently into his shoulder. Emma felt tears blur her own vision. This was the deep ache of grief finally surfacing. 2 years of pent-up sorrow seeking release. Margaret, alerted by the commotion, peeked around the doorway. Emma met her gaze and shook her head slightly, signaling that they should allow father and daughter this private moment. Margaret nodded, retreating with quiet understanding. Bella's sobs eventually lessened, and she pulled back, wiping her face. Nathan, eyes wet, gently brushed a strand of hair away from her forehead. Although Bella still didn't speak, Emma felt the reverberations of a breakthrough. The shackles of silence seemed weaker now, as though Bella could at any instant break free and voice the storm of feelings locked inside. Still kneeling, Nathan turned to Emma. For a moment, no one spoke, and no one needed to. The painting stood in front of them, a testimony to their collective hope. Emma sensed that their shared journey had moved beyond mere brushstrokes. A quiet transformation was unfolding in all three of them, forging a bond that transcended the distances between their separate worlds. Sunlight streamed through the high windows of the Donovan mansion, bathing the polished floors in warmth. Emma lingered in the hallway near the studio door that stood ajar. Outside, birds chirped in a gentle symphony, and a cool breeze drifted in through the partially open windows. It was a strangely peaceful morning, despite the undercurrent of emotional intensity still humming through the house. She stepped inside the studio and found Bella quietly sketching at a table, shoulders slightly hunched in concentration. Gone were the days when Bella avoided this space altogether. Now, she came here on her own, often carrying her stuffed cat under one arm. Emma noticed Bella's jaw set with focus as the girl drew short, deliberate lines that formed the beginnings of a tree trunk. Something about it reminded Emma of the giant oak in the backyard, the place where Bella used to sit alone. Not wanting to interrupt, Emma stood by the shelves of art supplies, scanning them to see what might inspire Bella further. Paint tubes, fresh paper, rows of colored pencils all beckoned. She considered pulling out a new medium, oil pastels perhaps, but then decided to let Bella continue at her own pace. A rustle behind her drew Emma's attention. Nathan entered, his expression caught between relief and lingering caution. "Morning," he said, crossing the room with quiet steps. "How's she doing today?" Emma gave a small shrug. "Seems focused. She's been drawing for a while." She glanced at Bella, who shot them a brief look before resuming her sketch. Nathan followed Emma's gaze, his features softening at the sight of his daughter, so absorbed in creation. It struck Emma again how different his demeanor had become since the first day they met, when he was all cool distances and measured words. Now, the lines around his eyes held a kind of tender worry, as if he feared doing anything to break Bella's fragile progress. For a while, the three of them coexisted in near silence, Bella drawing, Emma tidying the room, and Nathan leaning against the wall, occasionally checking his phone. The hush was comfortable, charged with subtle hope. Emma found herself wondering if this was what real healing looked like. Quiet moments where words weren't necessary, yet everyone felt the threads of connection weaving closer. Eventually, Bella put down her pencil. She stared at the half-finished tree, then turned the page, shifting to a fresh sheet. Emma approached cautiously. "Did you want to try something else?" she asked, voice low. Bella reached for a light green pencil and began shading gentle strokes, forming a small shape Emma couldn't yet decipher. Emma pulled up a stool and sat beside her, letting Bella set the tempo. Nathan hovered close, phone in hand. A soft buzz broke the silence. He answered in hushed tones, stepping out into the hall. Emma heard snippets of his conversation, something about an important investor meeting. Her thoughts drifted to her own career. She remembered the email from the editor who'd shown interest, Though no formal offer was made, the conversation had been promising, and a follow-up call was scheduled for the next day. The idea of having her illustrations published felt both thrilling and surreal. Bella paused in her drawing, glancing at Emma's expression as if sensing the swirl of thoughts behind her eyes. Emma mustered a gentle smile. "I'm fine," she murmured. "Just thinking about, well, art." She hoped Bella understood that she was part of Emma's inspiration. Before either could respond further, Nathan reappeared, ending his phone call. He exhaled, raking a hand through his hair. "I have some business to attend to this afternoon, but I can stay for Bella's art session," he said, eyeing his daughter with clear devotion. Bella's pencil hovered above the page, her eyes shifting between Emma and her father. With a tiny nod, she resumed shading the shape, a soft, leaf-like curve that fluttered across the page. A quiet knock sounded at the studio door. Margaret peered in with a gentle smile. "Would Bella like a snack?" she asked. "Andrew baked fresh pastries this morning." Emma looked to Bella, who paused her drawing. The child hesitated, then gave the faintest affirmative nod. A small triumph. Bella used to ignore such questions entirely. Margaret excused herself, promising to return with a plate. When Margaret left, Emma reached over to a separate sketchpad and flipped it open. She scribbled a quick doodle of a little girl beneath a towering oak tree. In the doodle, bright rays of sunlight filtered through the branches. She slid the drawing toward Bella, who studied it with those penetrating green eyes. Then, with deliberate care, Bella picked a yellow pencil and drew a swirl of light around the tree. The moment felt fragile yet steady, a reflection of Bella's own progress. Her journey remained fraught with uncertainty. She still clung to silence, but Emma sensed a quiet transformation stirring. Every day, Bella seemed a bit more present, a bit more willing to engage, as though bracing herself for a leap of faith that might bring her voice to life. Nathan cleared his throat. "Bella," he said gently, "I'm so proud of how far you've come." He kept his distance but let genuine emotion color his voice. Bella put down her pencil, gazing at him. Her eyes glimmered with something unspoken. Emma felt an ache of empathy, silently hoping that one day soon Bella would speak the words locked inside. A few days later, Emma drove her aging Honda Civic through the winding streets of Boston, the cityscape looming under a crisp blue sky. She'd spent so many afternoons at the Donovan estate that returning to her own part of town felt oddly foreign. Yet she had important errands to run, and a meeting to attend that could shape her future. Parking in front of an old brick building, she glanced at the handwritten note on her passenger seat, 12 p.m., Avery Publishing. The meeting with the editor was arranged more swiftly than she ever expected. Nervous excitement fluttered in her stomach like a cluster of restless butterflies. She forced herself to step out, bag in hand, ignoring the sinking worry that maybe she wasn't ready. As she entered the modest lobby, memories of countless rejections from other publishers flooded her mind, but this time felt different. She had new illustrations inspired by her experiences with Bella, scenes of quiet healing, whimsical characters that reflected the power of friendship and emotional resilience. The sense of purpose behind her art was stronger than ever. A receptionist directed Emma upstairs, and she soon found herself in a small but bright office adorned with children's book posters. The editor, Karen O'Neill, greeted her with an open smile and a cup of tea. Emma recognized Karen's name from some of the email exchanges, but meeting in person felt both exhilarating and terrifying. "Well, Emma," Karen said, settling into a worn leather chair, "I've been looking forward to seeing more of your work. You have a gentle yet vibrant style, perfect for the younger demographic. Let's take a look." Hands trembling slightly, Emma pulled out a folder of illustrations. Each page carried echoes of Bella's influence, from dreamy watercolor washes to playful cartoon figures that seemed on the edge of speech. Karen flipped through them with a thoughtful hum, pausing now and then to study the details. "These are quite lovely," Karen said at last. "I'm getting a sense of warmth and empathy in each image. That's exactly what can draw children into a story." "Have you worked out a full narrative to accompany the illustrations?" Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Yes, it's a story about a small, shy bird who stops singing after a big storm and how it learns to find its voice again through art and friendship." She felt her cheeks warm, realizing how closely it paralleled Bella's journey. Karen's eyes sparkled with interest. "That's a wonderful concept. It's relatable, especially in these times when many children experience anxiety or loss." She leaned forward, tapping a page that showed the tiny bird perched on a half-broken branch, a paintbrush in its beak. "This image alone tells a story of resilience. I can see young readers connecting with that." Emma exhaled, relief pooling in her chest. "I'm so glad. I've poured a lot of heart into it." Karen spent another few minutes asking about Emma's background, her process, and her availability for revisions. The conversation was direct but encouraging. Finally, Karen closed the folder with a smile. "I'd love to work with you, Emma. We might need to make a few tweaks or expansions, but the core is definitely publishable material. Let's see if we can nail down an agreement soon." Emotions surged: elation, disbelief, gratitude. Emma stammered her thanks, hardly believing that after years of rejections and near misses, this moment was real. Her voice trembled as she promised to follow up with any additional artwork and a refined manuscript. Leaving the building, Emma felt lighter, as though the whole city shone a bit brighter. She walked a few blocks, letting the early afternoon sun warm her face. Passing the shops and brownstone apartments, she recalled how, just weeks ago, her daily routine revolved around scraping by. Now she was on the verge of fulfilling her lifelong dream, and she owed part of that to an accident that first seemed like a disaster. She returned to her car and navigated through familiar streets. Eventually, she pulled up in front of her modest apartment building, the facade peeling and worn. Climbing the stairs, she unlocked her door. The cramped space felt like an old friend, a reminder of how far she'd come. She set her bag on the kitchen counter, pausing to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed. She checked the screen to see a text from Sarah Monroe, her journalist neighbor and confidant. "Saw your car outside. Everything good," Emma texted back. "I have big news. Tell you soon." She sank onto her sagging couch, letting a wave of joy wash over her. The smell of stale coffee lingered in the air, and the paint on the windowsill still peeled, but none of that bothered her now. She glanced at a small stack of bills and realized that for once she didn't feel overwhelmed by them. Hope had supplanted despair. Yet amid the excitement, a quiet ache for Bella's progress touched her heart. She wondered if, after living through her own trials, Bella might soon find the courage to speak. Emma resolved to continue helping Bella however she could, art serving as their bridge. She closed her eyes briefly, imagining the day Bella's words would finally break the silence. 2 days later, Emma stood on the Donovan mansion's terrace, admiring the afternoon sun glinting off the trimmed hedges. In her hand, she clutched a slim manila folder containing the preliminary contract from Avery Publishing. She planned to show it to Nathan, not to seek his approval, but to share the moment with someone who had inadvertently opened this door for her. The glass doors slid open behind her. Nathan stepped out, wearing a casual sweater instead of his usual button-down. He paused, noticing the folder in Emma's grasp. "Is that what I think it is?" Emma turned, a broad smile lighting her features. "The publishing offer? Well, the preliminary version, anyway." "It's happening," Nathan. They really want my book. Nathan moved closer, an appreciative gleam in his eyes. That's fantastic news, he murmured. I knew your work was special. Emma felt a flush creep up her neck. You were the one who introduced me to this possibility. I can't thank you enough. He waved off her gratitude with a slight tilt of his head. You earned it. All I did was point you in the right direction. Behind Nathan, Bella appeared. The child lingered in the doorway, observing Emma with a quiet alertness. She spotted the folder too, but if she understood its significance, she gave no outward sign. Emma offered her a gentle smile. Hey, Bella, I was just telling your dad some good news about my art. Bella approached with measured steps, her stuffed cat tucked under one arm. She looked at Emma, then at the folder, before extending a hand as if requesting to see it. Emma hesitated. These were formal documents, not exactly child-friendly, but she opened the folder, revealing a few sample illustrations and the summary of her story. Bella's gaze flitted over the pages. One illustration featured a small bird perched on a branch, painting a sunrise. Bella's eyes lingered there. Emma sensed the girl's fascination. Bella lightly touched the drawing, fingers tracing the bird's outline. The hint of longing in Bella's expression tugged at Emma's heart. This fictional bird's tale mirrored Bella's own silent struggle to reclaim her voice. Nathan cleared his throat softly. Maybe we could show Bella the story later. She might like to know she was part of the inspiration. Bella looked up at him, then at Emma, and for a moment something flickered in her eyes. Gratitude or curiosity. Emma felt it was a small but profound step, a silent acknowledgement that she and Bella were connected through the healing power of art. Later, Margaret appeared, inviting them to the living room for a cup of tea. The aroma of freshly baked cookies wafted through the air, courtesy of Andrew's kitchen wizardry. Bella sat on the couch, hugging her knees, while Emma and Nathan settled in nearby chairs. The gentle murmur of conversation created a soothing backdrop. Emma found herself updating Nathan on her plans for the children's book. She explained the editorial process, how she'd refine the manuscript, adjust some illustrations, and then work with the design team on layout. Nathan listened intently, occasionally glancing at Bella to see if she was following along. The child's gaze shifted between them, as though absorbing each detail. After a while, Emma retrieved her laptop and showed Bella a digital mock-up of the book's tentative cover. A whimsical scene of the little bird perched on a branch, brushing streaks of color across a rising sun. Bella's lips parted as she studied the image, her breathing uneven. Emma knew better than to push for a reaction, so she simply let Bella take it in. A soft rumble of thunder outside made Bella stiffen momentarily. Storm clouds loomed on the horizon, casting shifting shadows through the windows. Nathan was about to speak, perhaps to offer reassurance, when Bella unexpectedly reached for the laptop. She tapped the spacebar lightly, cycling through a few more images. Each click revealed a new illustration, the bird feeling lost, encountering a friend, discovering paints. Emma watched Bella's face and saw tears brimming in those green eyes. The child closed the laptop gently, hugging it to her chest for a second before placing it on the coffee table. Emma leaned forward, heart pounding with the realization that Bella was so close to some kind of breakthrough, her emotions now palpable, unrestrained. Nathan slid over, wrapping an arm around Bella in a comforting gesture. She didn't resist. Her silent tears slipped onto his sweater, leaving small damp spots. Outside, a flash of lightning illuminated the windows, followed by a low roll of thunder. Bella trembled but held her ground, as though determined not to be driven back into isolation. Emma's mind whirled, recalling how Bella once fled at the slightest provocation. Yet here she was, facing stormy weather, engaged with others, and freely expressing emotions even if not words. It was as if the house itself felt the shift, no longer a silent, lonely place, but a haven for tentative hope and growing courage. Lightning flickered again, casting fleeting silhouettes across the walls. Bella glanced at Emma, her teary eyes full of unspoken thoughts. In the hush between thunderclaps, Emma whispered, "You're safe, Bella. We're both here." The child exhaled shakily, allowing Nathan's arm to stay around her. And Emma felt a renewed conviction that both Bella's future and her own were on the brink of a profound transformation. Evening swept across the Donovan mansion, painting the sky with hues of deep purple and rosy orange. From her vantage point in the upstairs guest suite, Emma gazed at the twilight over the neatly manicured garden. She'd stayed later than usual, having lost track of time in the midst of finalizing a digital rough draft for her upcoming book. Working on it within these walls, where she'd found so much inspiration, felt fitting. She stepped into the hallway and made her way downstairs, drawn by a faint piano melody echoing from the living room. To her surprise, she found Nathan sitting at a sleek black piano tucked in a corner, playing a soft, melancholic tune. Bella stood a few feet away, watching him intently with her stuffed cat clutched to her side. Emma paused by the doorway, heart stirring at the unexpected scene. She'd never seen Nathan play before. This quiet performance felt like a glimpse into another layer of his soul. Bella's face was calm, her eyes bright with curiosity. When the music ended, a fragile hush blanketed the room. Nathan turned on the piano bench, catching Emma's reflection in the polished surface. He gave a self-conscious smile. "I used to play sometimes, back when, well, before. I haven't had the will until now." "It was beautiful," Emma murmured, stepping forward. Bella shifted slightly, not retreating as Emma took a seat on the couch. Nathan cleared his throat. Bella always loved to listen to her mother sing along. But after Julie passed, I couldn't touch the keys without remembering what was lost. Tonight just felt right. Bella inched closer to the piano, lightly pressing a single key. The note chimed, reverberating in the stillness. She looked at her father as if asking permission. He nodded, encouraging her to try. Bella pressed another key, then another, forming a hesitant, disjointed sequence. Emma watched the interplay with bated breath. Every slow, deliberate note Bella played was like a step into unknown territory. She remembered the way Bella's paintings had mirrored her emotions. Now the piano seemed to be offering a new way for her to explore her inner world. A low rumble of distant thunder threatened to intrude on the piece. But Bella did not flinch this time. Instead, she kept tapping keys one by one, eyes fixed on the piano's glossy surface. Emma realized Bella's breathing remained steady. Was the storm that once terrified her losing its power? As Bella's fingers stilled, a gentle raindrop tapped against the window. Nathan reached out and brushed a hand over Bella's hair. "If you ever want to learn, we can get you lessons," he said softly. "I'd do anything to see you enjoying music again." The child looked up at him with glistening eyes. Her lips parted slightly, but still no sound emerged. Emma felt a knot form in her chest. Every moment with Bella was laced with the anticipation of words that never came, but might at any second. Margaret interrupted, her voice low and respectful. "Dinner is ready, if you're all hungry." Andrew prepared something special. She paused, noticing Bella's engrossment in the piano. "No rush. I can keep it warm." Nathan rose, gently coaxing Bella along. Emma followed them into the dining room, where a soft glow emanated from a chandelier, reflecting on polished silverware. Andrew had laid out a modest yet artful meal. Bella took her seat next to Emma, while Nathan settled across from them. It was a serene dinner, light conversation where Emma shared a few details of her forthcoming publication, and Nathan updated them about a new philanthropic initiative he was launching at Donovan Tech. Bella ate quietly, occasionally glancing from one adult to the other as if following the conversation's rhythm. After the plates were cleared, Bella gently pushed back her chair, and Emma sensed the girl's restlessness. She turned to Bella. "Would you like to draw for a bit in the living room?" Bella responded with a small nod, so they rose and left the table together. Nathan lingered behind, watching with a thoughtful gaze. Once in the living room, Bella grabbed a notepad and crayons, sitting on the plush rug by the fireplace. Emma joined her, folding her legs beneath her. They settled into a comfortable stillness as Bella sketched. Outside, the rain intensified, tapping steadily on the roof like a distant metronome. Emma found her mind drifting to all that had happened since the day she dented Nathan's Aston Martin. Each stroke of fate had led her here, forging deep bonds that felt both unexpected and indispensable. She thought of her old self, struggling art teacher, filled with dreams but overshadowed by financial worries and rejections. Now she was on the brink of publishing her own book, guiding a child toward emotional freedom, and learning more about her own capacity for compassion and bravery. Bella finished her drawing, a simple outline of two figures beneath an umbrella, each holding a paintbrush. Emma felt a tightness in her throat, recognizing the figures as mirrored versions of herself and Bella. The child looked up, eyes shimmering with a silent message. Emma placed a gentle hand on Bella's shoulder. Neither said a word, but the connection between them felt stronger than ever. Lightning flickered outside, illuminating the drawing in a bright, fleeting flash. Bella didn't flinch this time. Instead, she calmly rested her crayons beside the notepad. With a decisive motion, she lifted the paper and handed it to Emma. Emma's breath caught. She accepted the drawing, words lodging in her throat. Thunder rumbled overhead, rolling like a drum across the sky. In that charged stillness, Emma swore she saw Bella's lips move, shaping a faint, silent word. She couldn't be certain, but the possibility alone sent shivers down her spine. A quiet hope ignited, lighting the path forward for all of them as they hovered on the edge of a horizon, just waiting to be discovered. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.